Hi, welcome to a new SimplyMaya tutorial. Now this is going to be volume 2 in our introduction to modeling in Maya, as it deals with much more complicated bricks than the first one. So you don't have to have seen the first tutorial to watch this. If you're comfortable modeling in Maya and you just perhaps want to delve into something a little more complex than you'd normally tackle, by all means jump straight to this part. This part will predominantly focus again on edge flow and topology, but this time with more complicated pieces. So we'll be looking at this part for the main body of the tutorial, and this is actually a very complicated piece that's one continuous piece of quadded geometry, all with the correct edge smoothing. You'll notice we have no pinching, no artifacting, and putting something together like this is, it's really not trivial. Although you think Lego is quite simple, but even when I'm putting together much more complicated objects, they don't normally require pieces to be made as one contiguous whole. Sometimes it's necessary, and it can get very complicated, as this piece was. So if you're perhaps used to modeling simpler things in Maya and you want to take a look at something a bit more complicated, then this might be the tutorial for you. We will be concentrating on getting the topology nice so we can easily render this. In fact, I'll bring up a render so you can see, as with all the bricks we've got these nice crisp edges. Good models tend to render well, whereas badly put together ones are a huge struggle. So you need to get the basics down pat in terms of edge flow, smoothing, quadded geometry. I mean, I went ahead just for fun and blew up one of these Lego cars, which, because of the way we made the geometry, turned out to be rather simple, as opposed to having to fight with simulation engines. If you build stuff the right way to start with, well, the rest of the pipeline process becomes much simpler, and that's what we've tried to do over the course of these 2 volumes. So this one will be pretty similar to the first one. We'll just be dealing with more complex shapes, and at the end of this one we will I think that's enough of that. You've seen that explode. At the end of this one we'll put this little Lego truck together. We've done this already with this little Lego sports car at the end of volume 1, but for those of you that want to jump in with the modeling that's a little bit more complicated perhaps, I also did a part at the end where we put this little truck together so you would have something, and from here we will be diving straight into the first part. So I hope this has been of interest to you, and thank you very much for watching this. Hi, welcome back. So after we've now had a look at the finished Lego brick we'll be making, I've brought in the reference for it, which you can find in the project folder, of course. Now, if you're unsure how to do things like bring in this reference, I'm going to make certain assumptions during this tutorial because we're pegging it at a more intermediate level of Maya user. If you're unsure how to do some of these things, then you can always check out our Introduction to Maya video on the modeling of the more simple Lego bricks to get an idea. But for this course, I'm going to skip the kind of set up a project and bring in image planes and bring in reference. I'm going to assume that you already know how to do this. So I'm going to start off this project quite simply. We're going to build this bottom deck here with the hole cut into it and these Lego kind of upriser things. So in order to get this done, I'm going to start with a polygon cube, and the first thing I'm going to do is quarter it. So under the channel box, under the inputs, we're going to change all its subdivisions to 2, and that will cut it into quarters like so. Okay, now I'm going to move it into place, so I'll go for the top view for the reference, and I'm just going to move it up, and we're going to get this about central on the reference. So about there, hit R, scale it up. Okay, and we are of course only going to model a quarter of this thing. There is no point modeling all of it together. We might as well just model a quarter. So I'm going to want these lines on my center point, which we'll take care of at a moment, but first we're going to bring in a polygon cylinder here, and we're going to move that so it's on the reference too. Okay, let's click R here, scale it up just so we're on reference. Now there is a little perspective distortion on these images we're using for reference. They weren't the best in the world, honestly. So we might have to, as this one, as you can see, it wasn't exactly straight when I took the photograph of it. So we are not going to get it have to get it, sorry, spot on to the reference, just close enough in this case. Now let's move this one down so it's about at the same height as it is on the reference, and then we're going to take this here. So let's come in and get a vertex mode on this one. We're going to grab all these verts and we're going to push them up until they're about equal with the top. Now we will completely level them, but for right now we're just looking for sort of general guideline. So we'll take these vertex here, move these up, these ones too, move them up. In fact, this line we've got this edge superfluous to requirements, so shift and right click, delete edge, so we don't leave a bunch of vertices behind. Vertex once again, up we go, done. So we've got approximately the thickness of the top deck now. And now we need to make this and this one object. So I'm going to come in and go back to object mode for this one, select this. Now we are currently at 20 subdivisions on this polycylinder, and the more geometry we have to start with, the more complex it's going to get, the quicker it's going to get complex. So we're going to move this from 20 subdivisions to 8, and that will probably jump up in the air because I shifted the vertex on it. So we should have done that before we shifted those verts, but it's not a huge issue. Just move them down and there we go. So now we're left with the basic shape of a quarter of this Lego brick, but obviously this is no good. If we hit smooth now, this is never going to work. These objects need to be joined together. So let's come in and select all these faces and get rid of them. Now we can also, in this case, select the bottom faces and get rid of them. And you'll notice that the faces that were inside the model are black. This denotes an inside face, or a face that should be inside the model, and I can see these because I have two-sided lighting turned off. With it on, you can't see which direction the face normals are pointing, and this is fairly bad practice when you're modeling. So if you're coming in, make sure you've got your two-sided lighting turned off. Let's get rid of these bottom faces. Let's just hide this reference for a second and get rid of the faces on here as well. Okay, so now we can do a bridging operation between this object and this one. So this is quite simple. In order for me to be able to bridge this edge to this edge and this edge to this edge, I'm going to need to combine these objects first. So mesh combine, there we go. Select all the edges around here, select all the edges around here, and hit the bridging operation under modeling toolkit, bridge, and you'll see I've come in, and that's not how we would want a bridge. So you can either do this individually, bridge here to here, here to here, or you can use the bridge offset to fix it. Now look underneath, because sometimes the bridge offset can look correct on the top but not underneath, so just double check that your bridging operation worked the way it should. Go to face mode, select a few faces to make sure that again your bridging operation worked as it should. And there we are. So we're now basically together as one object. If we smooth it, however, it's going to turn into blancmange. So let's put a few smoothing control edges here, and then we're going to talk about how and why we need to retopologize this thing, because it's all quadded. So, at the end of the day, if you weren't going to do anything else with this chap, you'd actually be okay. And let's put one here and one here to hold these smoothing edges, and we'll throw one here to hold a smoothing edge around here. Now you would have to cut around here manually, so if we use the multi-cut and multi-cut and we locked it, so hold shift to lock it, and we locked it to say 40 there we go. So 10 should do, 10, 10, 10, and just keep going around holding shift, locking this at 10%. That might be a bit narrow when it comes to holding our smoothing, but to be honest, if you wanted to change it, you can grab the whole edge, double click on it, hold shift, click slide edge tool, and we can just slide that edge in to our liking. It's just to get it equidistant. The locking of the placement points with multi-tool is just so we can get it all in a nice circle. Right, so now we've got some smoothing control edges on this. You'll see that it doesn't quite smooth like blancmange anymore. We would still need some smoothing control edges down here, and of course we're not quadded on the top, so to get a quad on the top here is actually quite simple. Delete those 4 edges, and now you have 1, 2, 3, 4 edges. Now we have a completely quadded model. Now, we are going to run into an issue with this though, and that's an issue of edge flow. So on this model at the moment, we cannot cut across here. If we do, let me show you what happens. So we're going to cut across there. Let's say we needed an edge loop to come down. In fact, let's put one where we would need one. So we would need one here to hold the smoothing, because this is turning into far too rounded. So one there to hold the smoothing and one there to hold the smoothing. The problem is at the moment that's cutting right across this central upriser. So if I hit 3 to smooth, you can see that this is no longer a circle, which is part of the challenge in creating a complex model like this. When you've got 4 uprisers, you've got holes in the bottom, you've got holes in the side, you've got cylinders in the side, you really have to concentrate a little bit on your edge flow, otherwise you'll end up in a situation like this. So let's just undo that operation, because we know we don't need that. And we're going to have to look at another way now to get this smoothing edge in place, and indeed to look at the edge flow here, so when we're later on, when we're modeling and we need to put extra edges in for the smoothing of the more complex parts, we don't end up in a situation where we're running everything right across the top of this geometry. Okay, and another thing is, if we look at this from the top view, you can see these edges we put in for smoothing here. Well, they're not straight, which means this is going to smooth in a wavy line, which is absolutely no good to us. So let's select the edges, convert them to vertex by clicking Control and the right mouse button to vertex, scaling them towards each other just to make sure they're straight. And now we can go and do that with all of them. Again, there is points for neatness on this. The neater you are, especially with something like a smoothing edge, for some stuff it doesn't matter. If it's not going to deform and it's not on a line of smoothing, which will indeed deform, then you don't really need to worry that it's perfectly straight. A little bit wavy is okay. And you can see here I've got immediately a problem that this wasn't straight, so let's straighten that up. And again, straighten this up. We want to start out with this as neat as possible. So I was slightly off center when I pulled in the original circle, the original cylinder, which could have been done by simply snapping the middle of the circle to the middle of the object here, but in this case it's accurate enough. Alright, so now we've got a straightened up chappy here. Now before we can go along and look at retopologizing this, we should have an inside for it. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to duplicate this model and use it as the inside. So Control D, and then we can simply scale it down a bit and move it down a bit until it becomes the inside of our model. So we're not going to need the sides for that. So let's remove these sides. So I'm just clicking one and double clicking the one next to it, and that will allow me to delete those. So I end up with something like this. Now let's go and look on the top view. Let's get some X-ray on this. Okay, so we can see the inside there on the inside of the model. Let's go down here, and what we want at the moment is to make sure that this model is level with this. So let's select the bottom of it and make sure that it's level. Now we can straighten it up later, but we want it, somewhat accurate to start with. So back in here, now you'll notice that these faces would then become the outside of our model, and they're black, which means they should be inside the model. So if we try to bridge this at the moment, it's not going to work. So we need to come down here and get a mesh display, reverse the face. So all faces that are outside the model should be grey, or whatever color lambert you're using on them at this point. So that's fine. Let's take this and combine, mesh combine. There we go. So I'm going to grab this edge, and bridge them. There, we're in. We're done. Okay, so now we have a top and bottom to our model, but we still have this problem of edge flow. which is going to need sorting out. So in order to do this, I'm going to take from these lines here. So this is not a good way to build this corner at the moment, because as I've said, if I multi-cut across, I'm going to end up with a line, that's the flow of the edges, and that's not going to be good either now or down the line. So let's multi-cut here, and let's multi-cut here, and then all the way to the bottom, and I can get this, neater in a while. And then let's go here, press return to accept that cut operation here, here. Let's undo that and just do it all in one fell swoop. For some reason now it's decided to not play nicely. There we go. And here. Okay, so this has given us an issue with the edge now, in which we've got a couple of very nasty triangles here. So let's select this edge first off and delete it, because we don't need it anymore. Because you'll see now this is a quad, these are quads. Okay, now the other thing we've got going on here is now we've got this split up into 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's still a quad, but it's still not going to solve that edge flow problem. So let's come in and delete this edge. So I'm going to actually hold Shift and right click and delete edge, and then I'm going to come in here with the multi-cut tool, and I'm going to cut round to here. So we've straightened that up, and I'm going to cut down and up there. There we go. And basically I'm just going to cut round to the bottom again. So this multi-cut tool keeps, there we go, cut round to the bottom, and of course we need to go to here. So now we can delete some edges from the bottom. First off, this one, because it's superfluous to requirements, so delete edge, and then this one, delete edge. And there we go. We end up with a topology that now allows us to be able to cut through the edges of this model all the way up until the center. So that will give us some room to work with. We will of course need to also cut this one out. And again, that can just meet here. Done, and we'll straighten all this up in a second. Okay, so now when we cut, because we have a more correct edge flow for us, and let me just cut down here, you can see that we can cut across the center of the model. Now at the moment the edge loop's not really doing what we want it to do, but you will notice that it's not going over the center portion. And the reason the edge loop's not doing what we want it to do is we've only actually re-topologized 1/4 of this, of course. So let's cut the other quarters out, because we're not going to do this more than once. I mean, it's pointless to do this on all 4 sides. Now, in the basic beginners tutorial that we did on just starting modeling in Maya, we have done some of that, where we've then done that corner and that corner and that corner, because it's easier when you're first starting out to visualize in some regards. But for this, you would cut this into a quarter, and we don't need this edge here, so delete edge. Now we have lovely quadded topology all the way around. Let's see. So let's convert this section to vertex. Okay, R, and straighten it up. Okay, so these are going to hold smoothing edges. So again, there is points for neatness here. Edge and control to vertex. There we go. Whoops. Okay, they're done. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure these are nice and straight and out by the edges where I want them. Okay, so we're looking alright. These ones on the bottom can't be straight because the hole on the bottom here is a little smaller than the hole on the top. But as long as the edges that control the smoothing are straight, we're all good to go here. So that will now, when I run an edge loop down it, you can see I've got all this space to run this edge loop, and I could always, if I needed to, push this further in this way, which would give me even more space without having to cut across the top. Okay, so now we've done this, let's go and mirror this over so we get our hole shape back, and then we can look at cutting a hole in this. So easy way to mirror. We know we want to mirror in, say, Z and X. So let's get the pivot point for this, hit W, and where is it? It's right there in the center, as you would expect. And let's, before we do this, let's snap. Let's see. So are we in the center? We're not quite in the center. We should have snapped this to the main grid lines before we did this, but you know, it's not that difficult to come in and fix here. So I'm going to align this to, say, here, start off, and then I can align it to this vertex here. Now, before we go ahead and mirror, we of course want to make sure that all the vertex down this side are perfectly in line. So we're going to scale those in until we can't scale anymore, and then they're perfectly in line, and all the vertex here are perfectly in line. Now I think they were, but it really doesn't hurt to give it a check. So let's just see, yeah. So we're all perfectly in line now, and our pivot point is indeed snapped to the center, so we shouldn't have any problems with our merge operation. So here, and Q to get off the tool, and let's mirror. So mesh, mirror, and we've got a direction we need to be in. Now we want to merge the border, and we need to change the direction at the moment to negative X. There we go. So that's mirrored it over once, and you'll see now I've got exactly the same topology on both of those sides, of course. And you want to watch for your merge threshold, because it can come in a little high on this. So object mode, delete the history off it. So hotbox, edit, delete by type, history, and mirror it over again. So mesh, mirror. There we go. And this time we should be in Z. Z, come on. There we go. And done. So once again, delete the history off it. I use the hotbox generally, but of course you can go up here. Whoops. And I've hit poly divide. So no, we don't need any of that. So edit, delete by type, history, and that will get rid of the history on it. So now we're left with something that looks like this. So now I can smooth it. That forms the basis of our Lego brick here. Nice and smooth, and we have, you know, redirected edge flow across the sides here, so we have room to cut down the sides, all four sides. Okay, we have a little hole on the bottom. That should all smooth out rather nicely as well. It does. So, you know, not too complicated to put these two objects together and get the topology in such a way, or the edge flow in such a way, that we have room to cut down all four sides. So in the next part we're going to look at cutting a hole in the middle of this, which again can be quite challenging to cut a hole in something, and in our case, because we need geometry running out of that hole, we're going to have to do this with a rather higher polygon hole. So I will see you in the next part. I hope some of this has been interesting to you. Thank you very much for watching. Hi, welcome back. So in this part we're going to look at cutting the hole in the center of this object, and before we can do that, there's a couple of things I want to check. I always check that I'm on the center line here. I appear to be, but a little confirmation never hurts. So once again, I believe we were after the last part, but I've had a little break in between these, so I'm just checking. Right, so we seem to have that all organized. Now before we can proceed, we want to simplify this as much as we possibly can. So we're going to take out these edge loops that were running down here and down here, so delete edge. Now we want to take out these edge loops that are running across here and across here, so delete edge. Basically we want to get rid of the edge loops we're not going to be using. Now we are going to put those back in for smoothing purposes, but the less edges and topology we have to look at right now, the better. So I'm going to select here and here, here and here, and I'm going to delete those, because if we were to mirror this way and then to mirror it that way, we would of course run into that issue of inside faces in the model. So that's the reason we get rid of those. Now I'm going to bring in a cylinder to use as a cutting guide. So I'm going to start the cylinder. That should be in exactly the middle of the grid. Let's turn off grid snapping and look at this from the top. Now I'm going to use wireframe unshaded because it will be easier for this, so I can see all the edges here, and I'm going to scale this up to the reference. Let's go into the channel box, and there is the reference. So let's R to scale it, get it approximately the same size. There we go. and we are just about done. Now we need to cut this on both the top and the bottom, so let's bring in the bottom reference and attribute editor. Let's bring in the bottom reference, so complex brick bottom, and let's have a look. On the bottom you can see that we have the hole here. Now this reference is slightly off kilter. Let me just move it so we can see what we're doing. So there, it seems like when I brought it in it wasn't perfectly matched. There we go. So as you can see, on the bottom we have a hole, but we also have another plane that runs around it. Now, and again, we also have these extrusions out here. Now to do these extrusions, I'm going to want one central point. So I'm actually going to rotate this. You'll notice I've kept the geometry quite high. That is because I want to be able to cut from this point and this point straight down here. And to do that from this point to this point, or if we used less geometry, we would end up too fat. So we need a higher polygon object for this particular operation. Now let's make sure this is nice and straight. There we go, seems to be. Now we need to cut it so we still maintain symmetry in X and Z. So that does mean putting a few extra points in this, but because they're on the straight lines of the cylinder here and we're using a very high poly cylinder, we can get away with a couple of extra lines. Again, another reason for using a high poly cylinder without distorting the look of it that much. So we're going to cut this now into quarters. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to go to the channel modeling toolkit, of course, multi-cut. I'm going to start with the cut in the center, then I'm going to click on here, click shift to lock it. I'm going to lock it to 50%. Do the same on the bottom. I'm going to lock it to 50% and finally connect it up in the center. Press enter to say that's okay, and turn off the image planes because they are getting on in the way a bit. Now we're only going to work on a quarter of this, of course. During the beginners tutorial we did a few sections where we worked on the whole model because it's easier to visualize, but something like this, working on a quarter, is going to just be faster. So I'm going to accept that one too. And now of course we can cut away the faces that we don't need. So let's come in, go here, face mode, let's cut away these faces, we don't need them, and let's cut away these faces. Now we're going to make sure that these verts end up on the center line, so vertex, drag select, grid snapping, W, move them anywhere, move them back. Same with this one, anywhere and back. Same with this one, anywhere and back. There we go. So we want to make sure we have a nice even construction here. We don't want to be in a position where we're cutting an uneven circle. That would be no good right from the start. So let's look at how we're going to cut around this thing now. Now this is simply a cutting guide. We're not going to use this. This is a very disposable object in this particular instance. So let's come in and get a view from the bottom, because we'll cut the bottom first. So orthographic, new, bottom, okay, and we can now start cutting this bottom bit out. Now for us, we're going to cut along the lines that are already there. Now we don't need the reference because we know where to size. So we can use the multi-cut tool to cut this in like so. So let's go to the modeling toolkit, multi-cut, and make sure we have the object selected. Before we do that, I'm going to put it on vertex mode so I can see the vertex, and we're obviously going to need one that comes down here, but first let's just break these lines apart. So I'm going to cut it here, and then I'm going to move it, oops, with grid snapping off of course, out to here. Now part of the reason we're going to have an issue with this, so let's just undo that operation in its entirety. Let's for now just go to object mode and let's hide this, Control H, and I want these lines, so let's take the vertex and move them here and here so they are more hole shaped. Okay, and that's just going to allow us to more easily see the lines here. So bring our cylinder back, Shift H, and now I can see that we need to cut down these lines and where we need to cut it. So I'm going to use the multi-cut, and I'm going to need to cut, actually I'm on the wrong object, so Q once again, that gets me every time with this tool. Alright, so we can use this point to join here, then we'll need another point to join here, we'll need another point to join here. This can come out on a central line, but we'll need one here, one here. Actually, I can't do that in one operation, so we'll need another one here. Let's go to vertex to show them. We'll need another one here and another one here. Now this will make sense when I start to move this into place. So let's hit W for the move tool, and let's move this vertex down to here. And then this one would have to come down to here as well. And obviously we cannot leave those uncombined. So target weld to target or center, it doesn't really make any difference there. That gives us one edge here. Let's go here, W to move this one down like so. Let's move this one down like so. And finally, let's move this one, making sure we only take it on the axis here so we don't accidentally scale our box. And again, same on this side. Just move this one down. And this is where it helps to have this cylinder to use as a cutting guide. As I said, it is a disposable object, it's merely a guide. So let's zoom in here a bit and get this a bit even Steven. Done here and around here. Done. And this is a bit tedious, but there are other ways to do this. This is one of my favorites. It gives us some flexibility and control. Done. Done. And done. Okay, actually I want to make sure I only do that on one axis. There we go. So that is our, or part of our hole on the bottom. Let's flip to the top view. So panels, orthographic top. Okay, and now we need to do the same thing here. So again, this is a case of doing the same thing, but in this case, I think I'll actually directly link this point to this one. So let's multi-cut here and get on the right object. I told you that gets me every time. See the vertices, so one here, one, oops, yeah, I can't finish that in one operation, just backspace to undo that, enter to complete, and one here and one here. So that should be enough verts for the top, because we're going to use this one to come here. So hit W, just move this vertex here. I mean that won't really affect our smoothing that much because we've got the smoothing edge here, and even if so, it would be a very, very minute fluctuation. So again, sometimes it's better to reuse geometry. We'd have an even bigger pole if we joined another line to this as well, so that's something to take into consideration. Okay, this looks about right, and we're going to straighten these up top and bottom in a second. For now we're just getting them, you know, close. And this one down here. Okay, so let's hide our cutting guide. Object mode, there we go. And I can't use the F8 keys and whatnot to switch between because it interferes with the recording software, so apologies for being a bit slow. Control H. Okay, now we want to look through this object, shading X-ray, and make sure that our top and bottom are exactly aligned. And they are pretty much. We can obviously select both sets of vertex, scale them in together on both axes here to get them exactly aligned. Now that's not such an issue, but you know, for the sake of neatness, there we go. They are now in exact alignment. Done. Okay, done, and done, and done. They were pretty close together anyway, so you know, if you hadn't had them quite in exact alignment, you could have got away with that. Right, now we need some edges to come across here, so let's go shading, let's turn it off X-ray, and let's cut the bottom edges in first. So we'll move over to the top bottom camera, of course, bottom camera for cutting bottom edges, and have a look at what would need to be done. Now we're going to need to run some geometry around for this thing, so let's see the vertex points. So right now we're going to need an edge loop down here. Okay, so let's see if we can cut in most of the edge loop. We can, up to there, and we're going to need another one here, and the same on this side, so one here and one here. Okay, and then we'll need to bridge these manually. Done and done, and again done and done, and we're creating n-gons and all sorts of things right now, but we can come back and look at that. First of all, because this hole is going to have some depth to it on the bottom, it's going to have a wall that's extruded downwards. Let's bring back our cutting guide, Control H, Shift H, sorry, and let's scale it from its central point and scale it until we give some thickness to our hole here. So in this case, we've got one to meet the point here, one to meet the point here, one to meet the point here. We are going to need one here and one here. Okay, so let me just hide that. So we should have all the edges we need, really. Let me bring that back. Maybe I'm just having a moment. So one. Yeah, we do have all the points we need, of course. So let's come in, multi-cut. I've done it again. Seriously. There we go. One here, one here. We don't actually want to cut across that. Yes, actually we do. So we need to cut across this too. Finish that operation. Multi-cut from here to here. So now we're going to multi-cut from here to here. There we go. And let's just organize these before we go any further. So this one is going to come down here, like so. This one is going to go over here. And you know, when I do these tutorials, I don't tend to be as accurate as I normally would, just for the sake of brevity. I mean, we want to get this done pretty quickly here, and watching me micromanage vertex points is not that interesting. So we're just going perhaps a little faster and playing a bit fast and loose with these points, but obviously at home you would have more time to cut that in a bit more accurately. Again, we're dealing with a very small scale part here as well, so we are dealing with relatively small dimensions, so you're looking at fractions of a millimeter or fractions of an inch if you're a little bit off, so it's really not going to make that much difference also. Okay, so I'm going to call that probably close enough, and now we have this geometry here, and you'll see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sides here. 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, and let me turn the grid off so we're not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, that's a problem, and actually this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a problem too, but we'll come back and look at that in a second. For right now, I want to get rid of this face and get rid of this one, and now we do have a hole cut through the middle of this thing. You know, on the top, of course, we need to finish off these lines. So multi-cut here to here, so it locks in place with that vertex, and here to here until it locks in place with that vertex. Again, here to here, and here to here. So now we have our hole cut. Before we go ahead and fix this topology, I think we're absolutely fine on the top. It's just the bottom we have a slight problem with. Okay, so this turns out to be a rather simple fix. Just looking at it, I can target weld this to here, and that fixes it. Now we're all quadded. Now that has moved our smoothing line, which will help the smoothing here, but it's such a small move that it's really not going to make that much difference. Right, now in order to, let's just hit Q so we're not on that multi-cut tool. In order to bridge this thing across, let's look at it. So let's bring back the reference a second. Now we can see from our reference that we have this extruded cylinder down here and this extruded edge, which you can see on the top. This is actually extruded downwards and upwards. So let's take care of that extrusion. Let's just hide the reference because we know what we're going to be extruding. And I'm going to come up to here to face. I'm going to click here, click, and then click here. I'm double clicking just to do that quick selection. And I will extrude this downwards. So modeling toolkit, extrude. Let's extrude it downwards. We have way too many divisions here, so let's get rid of those. Don't need them. And let's just check the reference again quickly, just to make sure that we're extruded about the right length. So about here, I think, would be about good. Okay, so back up here, get rid of faces we don't need. Now we're going to need these to be connected to each other as well. So object mode, let's do a bridging operation here. So here and here, and here and here. Let's do a bridge, because that hole is supposed to be, filled in all the way through the center of the model. So modeling toolkit, bridge, there we go. And now we don't need these faces here. And we've probably got a few we don't need here. Yeah, we got one we don't need there, because this is going to be mirrored across in this direction and this direction. We can then take this edge and we can move it up. You can use the slide on edge tool, so shift and right mouse button to go slide on edge, slide edge tool, and then drag it up. That creates a smoothing edge around there. Let's use the multi-cut to create a smoothing edge around there. Now this will act as our smoothing edge here, this will act as our smoothing edge here. And I think, winner, we have a winner. Now, in order for us to get a proper look at this thing, we will smooth it in a second. So yeah, right now it's not looking too bad. Let's just mirror it across so we can double check that it's all gonna work right. Now let's check the location of our pivot. It's on the center of the grid where we left it, so that's good. And I'm gonna just do a mesh mirror now. There we go, so that's mirrored over. You want to watch your merge distance, so just in case you would end up merging some points that you don't need to. And mesh mirror, this time in Z mirror, and Z direction positive, there we go. And we end up with this object here. Now, I didn't watch for my merge points, so I'm actually going to double check that there's nothing wrong with this thing right now. Okay, there isn't. We have some issue here where this is too wide, but really that's an easy fix. We would just select the vertex along here, like so, and scale them in until we came back to a point that we were happy with. So we might have to make a few tweaks here. I'll just select these vertex, scale them in until you come to a point that you're happy with. Okay, so this is all looking pretty good right now. I'm just going to add some smoothing edges so we can check that it smooths correctly and we don't have any geometry that's a nightmare. Okay, so where you would normally expect to find control edges to control smoothing, so one kind of here, one here, and these are way too wavy, but we'll sort those out in a second. One here and one here. And again, sorting those out becomes relatively simplistic. You just select them, convert the selection to verts, and scale them. So we got a nice straight smoothing edge. Same all the way around, really. And I'd work on a quarter, of course, but for just checking the look of the whole thing, you've kind of got to work on the whole thing if you want to get a look. So verts, there we go. Move these inwards, probably. Slide on edge tool can also be used for that, of course. And sure we get nice smooth edges here. So okay, so now we've got some nice smooth controlling edges around. We're going to put a control loop across here so we aren't smoothing too much on these sides. And let's see here. So this is looking pretty good right now. Yeah, I mean this should be fine. Just to test the smooth out should be okay. You would need obviously a control edge around here and around here to hold the smoothing of the center line. I don't want to put too many in right now. I just want to check that this thing would smooth okay. So let's hit 3, and yeah, that smooths pretty decently. Now, I think this should probably be a bit taller, so I'm going to select the vertices. So my reference has a little bit of perspective distortion on it, so difficult to see sometimes, and of course you need to come in and selectively straighten those up. And in order to do a proper smooth on this, you need a smooth round here and a smooth round here, just so we can check it out. Okay, so that's smoothing okay. And we're looking pretty good. So, that was cutting a complex hole in something and keeping our edge flow around the edges. So if we did need to cut across here, we could, quite easily, really, without cutting across the center line. So we've got some room to maneuver now. and I'm going to just get this thing back in a state right now for the next part. So I will see you in the next part when we'll look at creating the sides of this and various other bits and pieces. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Okay, welcome back. So before we continue and do anything else, we want to cut this little guy back into its component parts, of course. So I'm going to cut across here and then just cut across here to get this back to where it should be. And you can see here our center line we haven't cut down, so let's make sure we cut across to the center, and now we're back where we should be. Now before I continue with anything, I want to simplify. I always simplify before moving on to a step. So we can come in here and start to delete some of these smoothing edges, just so we don't have a lot of extra geometry to deal with. And we should be about right now. I just don't like leaving a lot of edges around the place. We could even get rid of this one and this one if we needed to. So simplify a bit before you continue. So I'm just going to look around this to make sure before we go any further that there is nothing wrong. And okay, sorry about this folks, you saw a jump in the video. Both Maya and my recording software decided to crash on me, so I've had to rebuild this object completely. So you might see some minor variations. We're going to pull up the reference images in a second, but it should be topologically identical. From this circular part that we created in the last piece, this is the underneath of the brick by the way, from this circular part come two edges with a drop down towards the edge. So let's make those. Of course, we're just working on a quarter, so we just need one. Now let's look at our piece here. So we'll need one here. Now I can already tell that this edge is not wide enough. So if we cut down here at the moment, we'd end up with a scrawny piece that wasn't wide enough. So shift and right mouse click and use the slide edge tool to slide this edge up to about here, and then R for the scale trick to scale it, and now we can extrude a much fatter face along here. Now because we're going to extrude it up this way, we'll delete this face so it's not in the way, then we'll select these faces and just extrude them upwards. Okay, until they're in line. Now we don't need to be perfect, it's very easy to flatten this out by scaling all the verts on the same plane. Once again, let's make sure we don't have 20 divisions. Again, the simpler the geometry, the better. And we're in. Now we do have a face there, so click off the tool by hitting Q, click here, delete. So we deleted one of the faces, but when we extruded this upwards, we ended up with another one in there. Now, another problem, if I was to smooth this at the moment, you'll see something funky go on here. You see this point and this point have risen up. These are all on a flat line, and these have risen up. That's because we've got unmerged vertices in those selections somewhere, which is not surprising since we just extruded this upwards. So target weld, just come in, get them both, snap them. And there we go. Now there should only be these two to deal with because we simplified the topology of this so much. So let's hit 3 again, and that looks perfect. Q to get off the target weld tool, and yeah, that's absolutely fine. Now you'll see we've got extreme smoothing because we have no smoothing control edges, but the wonderful thing about those is because all of our topology throughout this has been kept in quads, when we want to put them back in, we can literally just go 1, 2, 3, then we don't have to bother with the cutouts during the extrusions. It's just easier a lot of the time to take out geometry when you can put it back in with control and one click of the mouse button. There's no point working around it, you'll just get into trouble. So that's about done for this. We need to take this edge here. Now this edge, I'm thinking edge, so let's come up, and what is this actually being used for? Nothing, it looks like. So delete edge, and we are still all in quads, I think. Yes, we are. Quick way to check is just run the multi-cut tool around there, and if it with control held. So again, we've simplified, simplify, simplify, simplify. Now let's get a vertex, and we want to straighten this guy up. So R, straighten it up. Okay, I actually missed one. There we go. Straighten that guy up. Make sure it doesn't look like a dog's breakfast now on the top and the bottom. It looks absolutely fine. So that's straightened up. That will make it easier for us to bend this downwards in a second. So I'm actually going to select this edge loop here, not the whole loop, but just maybe this much of it, and here and here and here, and I'm going to move it a bit this way. Okay, that's going to be impossible with that one selected, so let's do it this way. Okay, because there's a break in our piece, let's make sure this is not looking all terrible. It's not. There is a break in our piece that happens about there, so just about halfway across one of these bottom circles here. So yeah, I'm going to move mine here for now. Let's just make sure we're not cutting anything a bit too close. Nope. And then I'm going to take these two vertex here, and I'm going to move them downwards until they're in line with the bottom of this. Okay, like so. So this would now become my underneath piece. Now, I'm going to mirror this across now, just so we can go back to a perfectly symmetrical object for the next part. So mirroring should now be fantastically easy. This is right in the center of the model. This is on the center of the grid, so it should just be mesh, mirror, done, click away, and we need now mesh mirror again, mesh mirror. Okay, that's gone in the same direction. So which direction would we be in? I think negative X probably. Oops. I've clicked off merge border. I want merge border. There we go. Direction negative X. And no. Negative Z. There we go. Okay, so now we're all back to one perfectly symmetrical piece. Now, when it comes to smoothing control edges, again, we can put those in at the end. Because we've modeled this all in quads, look how easy that would be to put those back in. Same with the top here, no problem whatsoever. Alright, so I will see you in the next part when we finish this piece off, and if I smooth this now, you'll see that without those smoothing control edges, it's a bit overly smoothed, but we can see that we've got, you know, everything we need here for the bottom of this piece. So we'll do the sides when we come back. I hope this has been of interest to you. Hi, welcome back. So in the previous part we got our brick to this state, which are almost complete now with the main portion of the brick. We need to put the sides on. But before we go any further, I wanted to talk about smoothing again, because in the past we've just added some smoothing edges by using an edge loop. And you know, we need this to smooth better so it doesn't smooth between here and here. And before I start with this, I'm going to cut this guy in a quarter because we can now. So let's get a quarter of this guy. Whoops, face mode. And just cut down the center line here, and then cut down the center line here. It doesn't, of course, matter which quarter you decide to use. And we can mirror this over later. But let's come in and take a look at where we're going to run into an issue with this guy. Now, this edge is supposed to be in parallel with this edge, but of course if we do that, we'll end up with a triangle. So we could try and smooth it as it is right now. So let's do what we normally do. Let's put a smoothing edge in here, and a smoothing edge in here, and one here, one here, and one here. Now this should hold the smoothing, but if we begin to look at our corner here, you've got an awful lot of geometry sitting right on top of each other, and that still isn't going to get this edge level with this one. So let's take the vertex, and this is going to look horrendous. It's going to pinch, and I just want to show you that before we come up with a way to fix it. So we take this edge and shove it up here, so it's sort of all going to fold into one, and then hit smooth, and you can see if we go into object mode that we've got a massive pinch in this corner, and this edge really now has a lip on it. You can see the difference in color between the two, where everything has been rammed far too close together, and we're always going to run into issues with something like this. Now, smoothing it, of course you can smooth it other ways, but when you've got sort of lots and lots of lines coming together in a very tight space like this, especially on a corner like this, you're always going to run into that issue with nasty blob smoothing. This one appears sharper than this. There appears to be a sharp crease across the bottom here, which shouldn't be here, and you catch it, it's really not nice. So let's open this piece again and see how to do it a different way, a better way. Okay, so once again, cut it into quarters. And yeah, just let me cut that. There we go, done. And again, doesn't matter which quarter. And you can select face mode by right mouse clicking in face, edge, vertex, blah blah blah, or select it up here under multi-component. It really makes little difference. Right, let's come in and see how we would smooth this. So our goal in this is to get this edge and this edge together. Now, if we just target weld them together, we'll end up with a triangle. But in this case, that's the way to do it. We're going to get the triangle, which you don't want, and then figure out how to fix it. So we're going to target weld this one to this one, this one to this one. That gets rid of that very thin face there that we would then have to cut a lot of edge loops around. So let's first of all put in an edge up here. So let's multi-cut and put in an edge up here to smooth this. Now you'll see it stops cutting here. It's because we've got a triangle. Now straighten up this edge. So I'm going to select the verts for it. Oops. Do the scaling trick, straighten up the edge. Now we need to cut one across the bottom in about the same place as well. Now you'll see here we've got this darkening of the faces. You can really see it down here. Now this is Maya telling us that something's not quite right. You see it? So we've probably got an unmerged vertex in here somewhere. Now there's a couple of ways to fix this. We can delete the faces and rebridge them. Is a very easy way to do it actually. So let's do that. And it doesn't always mean there's a problem. Just better to take care of it now. When you start to spot sort of geometry that's doing that, it's always better to find a way to fix it. Now we could have gone to mesh merge, of course, but sometimes it's just easier to fix the faces as you see them. Right, now I'm not getting that sort of nasty blackness, sort of half a face black, so that seems to have dealt with that issue. Right, so we put our smoothing loop across here that was stopped by this triangle. Let's put one across the bottom, about equidistant to the one we had at the top, which will also be, actually that's a bit wide, I'm just going to Control Z that and do it again. No, it wants to, excuse me, mouse is having a conniption here, there we go. And that's probably about good enough. Okay, so now we've got one running across the top and one running across the bottom. The bottom one is of course not straight, so let's grab it, R to scale it, Control right click, take its vertex and just scale those in. Now we have them both straight. Now we need to manually connect these points. What we're trying to avoid is 5 or 6 loops running across a very, very small area. So let's multi-cut in, one here, try and get it as straight as possible. See if we can jump straight to this one. We can, and go. So hit enter there, and we've got our edge loop. Now it's not, we were a bit inaccurate with the spacing on the top and the bottom, but again, edge, scale in, convert it to vertex first, and scale in. Okay, now that's kind of moved this a little bit, so let's just move it back so it's straight along here. And we are done. We have an edge loop that goes equal distance on our top and bottom for smoothing, but we still have this problem here with this triangle. So we're going to need our edge loop in here to smooth this way, of course. So let's put one in, multi-cut. There we go. And let's put that edge loop in there for smoothing. And we're going to need another one along here, but this one isn't much of a problem. There we go. We can straighten that one in a second. Now all we're going to do is take this vertex, Q to get off the multi-cut tool. I'm going to push this vertex down and out a little bit. Okay, so this is now a quad. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all quads. We're all quadded now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we actually get rid of the triangle in that manner. And if you look here, we don't have hundreds of edges running down this thing. Now, at some point, I've gotten a little uneven here. I'm not sure why. So I'm going to hit that edge, come down here and double click this, make sure I've got it all the way around. I have, and I want this scaled evenly for the most part, so let's convert that to a vertex selection, and that really doesn't seem to want to straighten that one up, does it? Okay, that must be a height issue then. We must have changed the height here. So, not a problem. Let's go into one of the views where we can see the height. Okay, and just move that up until these pings are the exact same height. There we go. So at some point it must have just tweaked a vert there. That happens. Okay, let's go back in and look at our triangle here. Well, our non-triangle now. I'm just going to move that one out. Let's look on the other side. And we've still got a triangle on this side, but that's okay. We'll just put, again, a edge in here, like so. Grab this vertex, so Q to come off the tool, and move it so it's the same as it is on the other side. Okay, so now we've got a smoothing control edge in here to hold this. Now, it is at the moment not very... yeah, that's actually okay. So let's put one in here. Okay, so about there would do it. Now that's given me a line here that's very close to the front, which I don't particularly care for. So let's just take it, the edge here, Q, so I'm off the tool, go to the last point, double click, and move this out. Now this will actually act as a smoothing control edge at the moment, so that's fine. Now we've got to ask ourselves at this point, can we actually remove this one? So let's remove it, and this now comes up to a triangle here. So let's take this vertex and just move it out a bit so we can see what we're doing. Okay, this ends up as a big triangle. So you can see that this problem is, not always so easy to fix. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4. So all we need to do now is fix this triangle, which can be done in a number of ways. If I come in and just put an edge loop in here, that will fix it. And that saves us from having all the geometry kind of all crammed together along the edge we want to smooth. Because now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 up there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, this is not that complicated when you look at it. But what you want to avoid is that situation, I've got one in there, where you've got all the geometry crammed into a corner, because you're always going to have problems with that. So let's put all the smoothing control edges back in. So we've got one round there. Now we don't have one here, but that is going to cut across our main circle, which is a big no-no. So you can repurpose edges. There is no reason why we couldn't move this one a little bit closer into the corner here so it acts as a smoothing control edge. And let's just come down here, hit W to move, and let's just repurpose that. Now let's go into vertex selection, so this is straightened up. Oops, I'll grab both of those at once. So W, and let's just straighten that up along there, like so. And then this is looking a little bit dog's breakfasty, so let's move this one and possibly this one, so we just get a nicer line, so we're not kind of straight cut in, and this one out, and this one. So yeah, that should do it. Don't need to be perfect on that one, it's not holding anything in place. And now we've got a smoothing edge here. Again, these are now a bit sharp angled, so let's move it down and make that a square. And then of course we can just straighten this up a bit so it's not quite so uneven. Let's look at our corner here. Okay, this is going to be better when we smooth. There we go, we don't have that pinching, we don't have that hard line across there. Same on this side, we are all now nice and smooth. So this can take a bit of working out. When you get a corner like this, there can be a bit of a nightmare. You can end up with sort of edge loop, edge loop, edge loop, edge loop, edge loop, edge loop, and what you get is very nasty, very pinched geometry. Now this could be optimized some more, so you might want to have a think about that at home, because this can always be optimized. This was just a fairly quick way of getting it done that works. So we look at that corner, it's now really pretty. Okay, there's no pinching there, there's no harsh line. It's pretty much exactly what we were looking for. This piece of geometry terminates at this piece of geometry now. So we are done. When we come back, we'll look at making the sides of this thing. I think I have the reference here. So we're going to look at making these sides, which actually start here, go on, have a cylinder cut through them. So we'll get that done in the next part. We'll probably get to the point where we're joining the cylinder to it. So a couple more parts and this piece will be done. Now this is actually a very complicated piece, so if you've managed to get this far, well done, and I will see you in the next part. I hope this has been useful for a look at fixing a smooth on, say, a pinched corner or a pinched edge. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Hi, welcome back. So in the previous part we looked at some rather more complex smoothing that we've had to deal with on a corner that meets together like this. And in this part we're going to look at modeling this section here, so both top and bottom. Now I've done the thing in Photoshop again where I've just overdrawn it slightly because it's actually quite difficult to see on this reference, but you can see on the top part we've got a little shelf that comes out and then some edges that stick up coming into a square here which a cylinder proceeds out of. So let's jump right in. Now for this we will eventually connect this part and this part together. Sometimes it's easier not to do that from the start, so we're going to make the part and then we're going to figure out how to join it together. So I'm going to go on the top view, I'm going to make sure my model is perfectly centered here and it's good to the reference, it seems to be. So, you know, something to do before you start, just make sure you're all good with the reference, and we're going to come in and we're just going to work on a quarter of it. So I'm going to take a square to start with, nice and simple, and I'm going to get this kind of centered as I can here. We're on X-ray at the moment so we can see the reference. Okay, so I'm going to get it like so, pull it back a bit, and again we're not joining them together just yet. And I'm going to pull it all the way down here, which brings us to size. Now let's bring us to size with our brick because the reference is slightly off. And now we can pull it out this way till it matches here on the reference. Now we'll put a edge loop in it to create this wall here, and then we can just pull these vertex here backwards a little bit, there we go, to make the shape that we need. Now we also have a straight cut in here, so let's put an edge loop in here where the straight cut would be. Q to come off the edge tool of course, and then just move that out there and you create this shape very, very simply. I'm going to move to straighten this one up, I think, just like so, and this one just to more accurately match the reference, and I need to do a drag selection so I get both top and bottom vertices. There we go, and there we go. Now you can see there's a hole here, or in this case it's a shelf. So we're going to come up and put another edge loop in here where that shelf starts, and then I think I'll just square these up. It'll help with smoothing later on, most probably, so just come in here and split the difference. Alright, now let's look at our side view, and the starting position for this brick should be completely level with this one. So we can see here that's the top edge, so we are level, or so close it makes no difference, and then we want the bottom to be level with the bottom deck here. So I'm going to call this like the main deck of this brick. So this is slightly longer, as you can see. So let's just come in, vertex mode, there we go, select the bottom verts and move it up until it matches the bottom exactly. Now we have a good starting point, so when we come to join these together later, we won't be working with different thicknesses of the main deck here. Now one of the reasons, if we look on the reference here, this is actually extruded upwards, this deck part, and then this top part is extruded upwards again. One of the reasons we didn't start with a piece that was this tall, is simple. It's because in Maya it's generally easier to extrude upwards out of the model than it is to extrude downwards into the model. Extruding downwards will leave you with extra faces to deal with and can cause some problems. Now it is unavoidable sometimes, but if you can avoid it with some forward planning, you want to plan so your extrusions go out from the model instead of into the model. As I said, it's not always possible, but if you can plan around it, plan around it. So let's do this extrusion here, extrude, and this shelf seems to be just a bit lower than the top deck of this brick, than the top of this brick here. So let's go on to a side view, or a front view in this case, and just pull this up till it's a bit lower than the brick there. Okay. Now, of course, we're going to turn the divisions down to 1 because we want to keep everything as simple as possible. And that will extrude out our little shelf. Press Q to come off the extrude tool. We want to select these bricks to create the slightly higher lip. So extrude, and extrude upwards till we hit that slightly higher lip there. And again, divisions 1, Q to come off the tool. And that's basically made the top of our brick. Now we've got a big cylinder running across it. We've also got an extrusion here to make the square that the cylinder sits in, but we'll look at that later. For right now, we're really just trying to rough out the basic shape here, and that seems to be the basic shape. Okay, so we're about on reference, we're looking okay, and we've now got the bottom to do. So let's bring in the bottom image plane. So channel box, attribute editor, image plane shape, and let's just swap that out for the bottom here. So there is the bottom. Open the bottom, and you'll see on the bottom we've got a different set of geometry again. So let's flick from our top view here to our bottom view. So let's see, panels, orthographic, bottom, and now we need to deal with this bottom. But you'll see my image plane is actually in front of my model, so that's no good because we're on the bottom. We're going to have to pull it up this way. Now I can see the bottom of my brick, so I can start to see what needs to be done. Now this, I can already see, looks a little uneven, so let's just straighten it up. Okay, and that does look a little thicker. It's probably due to sort of errors in the reference. Now, on the bottom of the brick, this shelf here is actually level with the top deck of the brick. So this shelf, let's see it on the perspective, is level with this. So we don't actually need to cut this out. What we need to do is push this in. So we don't have the geometry for that. We would need another edge loop here. So let's go ahead and put one in here, like so, and then I can select these faces, but then again I get my shelf. So another edge loop is needed here. Okay, and we need to go onto vertex and get these two into position. Whoops, and again drag selection because there'll be two on the bottom as well. There we go, get that straight. And now we have the ability to take this and extrude them inwards. Now these are quite far extrusions inwards. They actually almost meet on the original Lego brick the top of this shelf, and we're doing an inwards extrusion, so this is going to leave us possibly with some issues. Before I do this inward extrusion, because this is going to be mirrored later, none of these faces are actually necessary, and this will allow us to see into the model to see if that inward extrusion causes us any problems. Now in this case it shouldn't. There's no reason it should. Because we're not extruding an outer wall, we're not going to be left with double faces, because there's no faces here now. We'll be left with another face to delete, but it shouldn't be that bad. So let's go to extrude, and let's just extrude this up until it's about there. Okay, so we don't seem to have done any damage to our model with that inwards extrusion. Like I say, it is quite common to do an inwards extrusion. It's just if you can do an outwards one, that's generally better. Okay, so that is the bottom deck of our brick. Now, of course, we've got the same with the bottom of the brick that we do with the top, except the bottom of the brick doesn't, if we can see that on the reference, the bottom of the brick leaves a gap here. As you can see here, there's a gap, so we're only extruding these faces this time, not these ones too, as you can see on the top of the brick. So let's do a downwards extrusion, and I'm going to get this at about the same height. It's just a little bit shorter than the bottom here. So let's come in, divisions of course 1, because we want to keep our geometry again as simple as possible. And let's hide these image planes for a second. So let's come on to the channel box and hide these, and that's looking pretty good. Now we've managed to get a spare face in here. As we extruded downwards, we got a face which we don't need, and we're looking quite good. Now on the bottom of this, it's actually bowed up, it's not straight across the piece. So I'm going to grab a front reference now, and I'll be back in a second so we can just look at what the front of this thing would look like. So here's the image. I have the piece in front of me, which I recommend you go out and buy a little Lego kit. I'll actually link in the description of the tutorial which one this is, because this does get easier if you've got it in front of you, and I think the one I bought was about $3 or something, so well worth it for having your own reference. But if we look at the front, you can see at the moment we are straight. So what we need to do is pull out here and get this sort of V shape to a flat part where the square would be extruded. So let's just see if we have the geometry for that. So we know by looking at the reference here that we need to go up around the center. So let's see, can we move an edge here? Okay, because this would be our square. So let's start with that. Vertex, let's grab these at the bottom, making sure we only have these ones, and pull them up. And then grab these ones. We've probably got too many there, we do, so let's just manually select them using Shift. Pull them up. We know this thing should make a square when it's done, so you can actually eyeball this in. If that was doubled, it would just about be square, I think. Possibly a little more upwards here. So get all these verts together, like so. Make sure I've got them all. Missed one. And we know that's going to make a square. So when that's doubled over now, that will be a square. When that's mirrored along the z-axis in this case, that will be square. So we know that must be right. And then we want to lift these edge pieces up here. Vertex. Lift these up here to create that kind of V shape we saw on the reference. Now you could bring the front reference in to get this more accurate. but for me, let me see, reference being king. Okay, so this is actually level with this. And just pull this one up ever so slightly more. And this one. And that should about do it, I should think. So that's really the basic shape of our top and bottom brick here. It's not an uncomplicated shape to make, but with a bit of forward planning, we only had one inwards extrusion, and we've got it pretty spot on, I think. If we look at the reference, perhaps this is a little bit more this way. So again, if you brought that reference into Maya, you could probably get that a bit more accurate. And can we just take this whole edge? What's it holding here? Okay, it's actually holding up that piece, but it should still be possible to move it a little bit, but that shrinks our hold. So now I'm thinking the reference must be a bit out, because as I look at the actual piece, yeah, this edge here is actually equidistant to the beginning of the hole. So I think it's just because it has a slight curve to it like this, when you photograph it straight on, the perspective is a little off. As I say, looking at the piece, this looks to be about right. So I'll be back in the next part when we cut in the cylinder for this. Hi, welcome back. So in the previous part we finished off with our basic shape here. Now there are a couple of issues that need to be resolved. I can see this face here is obviously not flat, or there is some unmergedness to it. So we could spend 5 minutes figuring out why, or we could simply just bridge it back across and see if that resolves the issue. It does, so that's nice and easy to fix. The other issue we're going to have is this should be level with this. But if we move this up any more, when we come to put our smoothing edges in, we're going to end up with lots of edges in the same place. Whoops, let me just undo that. We're going to end up with lots of edges in the same place, and we're going to get the same pinching problem that we had on this. So let's resolve that. And again, this is just something that needs to be looked at quickly. It shouldn't be that difficult. We are going to target weld this one to this one, this one to this one. So we've come up a situation now, triangle on this side, triangle on this side. So first off, let's cut across this. And I'm just going to cut all the way around it here. See if I can just finish off the cut there. I can. Smooth this one so it's about straight. Don't need to be uber perfect. There we go. So let's cut across that. But that, you might think, has just given us a smaller triangle. Well, we need here at the moment to cut some edge loops in for this thing. So, if we cut an edge loop across here, like so, then that will hold the bottom smooth. So we need one of those anyway. So if we do this like so to hold the bottom smooth around this, then this is no longer a triangle, because 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's quadded that. Now because we have the model cut in half, we're going to need to do the same on this side. So that should have got rid of that triangle. It did. Now we can come in and tweak the vertex a bit here, because that's not particularly nice. Like so. That should be absolutely fine. And like so. To make sure our smoothing control edge is nice and even, and again we can come back and sort that a little bit later. Okay, so now we have no triangle. We're also going to need a smoothing control edge around this whole front face here. So that gives us an easy line to put in to here. So let's just put it, say, here, and then we can just manually join up this, and that fixes all our triangles and n-gots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. Now we're going to have an issue joining that up on the bottom too. So there we go. And that gets us our smoothing control edge, and it kills the problem of pinching in this corner. So now we're in the mood for this. Let's put all of the smoothing controls in. So this one and this one. Let's come up and make sure we're going to get a nice even line there. Now we don't have one here, which we're going to need. So one there. And also these angles here are actually quite sharp when it delves into this sort of bunny ear shape and cat ear shape on the front here. So we're going to need some edges to make sure they stay nice and sharp. Okay, we're also going to need some edges to hold our holes in place. So not there, there, thank you, and in the inside there. Let's pull that one out, there, there, there. Going to need to hold the shape of this shelf, so here, here, and we've already got one there. So that should work just fine. And anyway, this is going to be connected to the main model, so it shouldn't be smooth at all. And let's see what that's done to us in terms of edges. Well, we've got a few more now. I do not like the fact that these are so close together. Let's see, what is this one doing? It's holding a smooth edge in there. And this one, and we've got two really close together here. So this one is holding the edge there, and the one next to it is doing what? Okay, it's holding the edge up there, so they are necessary. We should think about spacing those out because they are too close together. But again, you're just going to come in and space those out so they're more equidistant. Let's just see, we need a smoothing loop around the top, like so, and around here, like so, to hold that shelf in place. Okay, and I think now when we hit smooth, we should be about right. Yeah, so this is quite sharp. And what has gone on here? I think that's because of all the extra edges we have running down there. But also we don't have one in here either. So there we go, that's pretty much taking care of it. Now, so we don't have a lot of pinching going on there. No, it's actually quite nice. We would come in, and space these out a bit more so they're not all jammed together like that. But that's kept us some nice sharp lines on the front, which is nice. And now we need to join these two pieces together. We also need to put a cylinder through this, of course, but I find in an operation like this there's a couple of ways to do it. You can put the cylinder in and then try and join the two complex pieces together. However, if you do that, you'll find that if you put an 8-sided cylinder in and you've ended up with too many edges up here to accommodate an 8-sided cylinder, then you could get in problems with that. It's going to take a lot of retopologizing and whatnot. However, if we join these pieces together first, we can then look at how many loops we've got on the front of this thing and adjust the number of edges our cylinder has accordingly. It just makes life a little bit easier. So let's just pull this one away for now and unsmooth it, and we know that we're going to need none of these faces. This bottom edge meets up with this bottom edge, and this edge meets up with here. So let's delete all of these faces along the inside, because again, we don't want to try and attach something with faces on the inside of the model. So let's delete those, select this one, and can I just about reach that one? Yeah, double click, delete them all, and the same for this. So again, let's pull this a bit further apart, and we know that all these faces have got to go. Because this is now where it's going to be joined to the other model. So let's take those faces out, go to object mode and move these things a bit closer to each other, and you should see now we have a very easy way to connect those. Now this is a little higher, but that's okay. Now let's come in, select both models. I'm going to move this one a little bit out like so. Select both models and see if we've got the edge loops required to join these things together. So I've got one to go here, this one would go here, so I need another one. Actually, this one would go here, so I need 1, 2, 3 in here. So 1, and we want to avoid cutting across the top. So again, why we retopologized for edge flow to in an earlier part is because now we're not cutting across the top of this thing every time we do something like this, and we have no edge loop in here, so let's put one in there to match that, and then we have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So let's get another one, and then we'll have to move those manually into position in a second. Okay, so we got 1 for this, 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 and 1 for this, 1 of course. Let's check the bottom. So the bottom should be fairly similar. Now we've got 1, 1. We have too many here on the bottom. So 1, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So that's fine. We've got 1, 2, yeah, so we don't have enough geo on the bottom of this thing. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, that's fine. 1, 2, we need another one. 3, and we need another one. So not too many edge loops to insert there. Now we need to go and wrestle them all into place to make the joining a bit easier. So let's go into vertex mode here, and I'm going to start by taking a couple of verts and seeing a good way to move these out. So that's 1, 2, 3. Now obviously this is not very nice, but we can just widen that up a bit, like so, and just keep on going until you get, you know, topology that's more evenly spaced, like so. That's still a bit out. I would probably pull this one a bit further over, this one a bit further over, this one, and then of course these ones. Okay, just so it's a bit of a straighter line. And generally, guys, I would spend longer neatening this up. Like I see a vert in there that I really don't like, so I'd space that. I generally spend longer getting this spaced and nice and equidistant, but it is a little dull on a tutorial, and I think that we've done enough of this now that you see I'm just trying to get nice even spacing. So yeah, again, I could spend quite a while doing this just to get my spacing even. So let's look at it now. 3 lines there, 3 there, 1 that will connect there. We have 1, 2, 3 here, and we actually missed one. I think, yes we did. So this needs another edge loop in it. So multi-cut, and let's put one here. Done. Okay, let's set both of these things in object mode. Alright, so now we've got one here. We perhaps got that a little wonky. So let's do a vertex selection to vertex. Come on. And let's move it out like so. And that has given us a problem up there. So let's not do that. Let's put the edge loop in the right place the first time. So I'm actually going to go to wireframe unshaded, just to make this a little easier to see. There we go. And now I can put the edge loop in the right place the first time. So there, done. And that way we don't move it and ruin the line of this wall up here. Okay, so that one's nice and even. These ones are not. So again, let's vertex and let's get these so they're kind of together. Now you can change either model. You know, you can pull the lines on this one, pull the lines on this one. Generally depends on what's going to be more convenient at the time. For right now I'm actually doing this quite quickly, so that vert needs to come here. And again, straighten up. I'm not going to actually do much of that here, but do try and pay attention to getting everything nice and even. Well, you know, as nice and even as you can. You don't need to be fanatical about it. For something like this at any rate. Okay, so let's look at the bottom now. Alright, and the bottom's going to need quite a bit of editing here. So let us see. What is this edge actually doing? Now it gives us a good opportunity to come in and see if there's any edges we can actually get rid of. So what is this edge actually doing? It's going up there, over there. It's for this. Okay, now just as an exercise, what is this edge actually doing? It's holding the main smooth on there, so it can't be gotten rid of. Alright, it's better a lot of the time to just check, just to make sure you're not going to end up with you know, stuff that's superfluous to requirements. So let's select some vertex here, and this time let's move these. So just select the edge, the edge, and the edge, the edge, the edge, the edge, 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 and we're going to meet in the middle. Because it's a big gap, we will meet in the middle. Just press Q to get rid of the move tool for a second while I'm selecting. And you know what? I'm not really liking the way that's flowing at all. So let's get a vertex selection going on and see if it's not easier to move these and this W, move it here. Okay, that's actually connected to something down there as well. Okay, just a second here, folks. Because we've got a whole bunch of faces once again we don't need. I must have forgotten to delete some of these. So let's just come in, select the first one, select the last one, and delete. And now we're much more level. Okay, fine. No problem there then. Now this again is something that does take time to get these edges to flow nicely, but it's not time that I'm going to use right now because I think, you know, we have other stuff to do. Okay, so we've got one here for this. Just make sure neither of these models are smooth. So let's bring this over and bring this over like so. And we do not seem to have one. So we're missing one edge right now, it looks like. Okay, make sure that's alright, that's alright. So it looks like we're just missing one. One for here. So let's go to the multi-cut tool. And can I actually cut an edge in there? No, I can't because it goes right across that. So I'm going to have to cut it in here, so it doesn't bisect our cylinder, which again would ruin some of our geometry. And then vertex mode, and this one's going to have to go to here now. I mean, these are two fairly complex pieces to join together. I mean, don't think because it's Lego it's simple. In this case, it's really not. Okay, maybe push this one a little bit outwards just to keep nice squares as much as we can. Okay, now we should have all the edges, both top and bottom, that we need to join these things together. Now any topology issues, you know, like slightly crooked edges like this, you know, this could definitely be more evenly spaced, get us a nicer smooth, can be looked at once they're joined. Alright, so select the two pieces, and yeah, that's something we didn't look at. We need a multi-cut here because we need to join up with this side piece. So anything there, no, because it's not going to join there, it's just going to be mirrored there. Alright, so select both objects, 1 and 2, and do a mesh, combine. Okay, did it first time. Now, before I combine these things, I'm going to delete the history on them. These things have now got a lot of history on them. So what I would generally recommend is that you save a part with history. So save as, this will be actually part 15 end. 15 end. Just in case you've mucked something up and you need to come back and undo an operation. And then edit, delete by type, history. That gets rid of all the history on our merged cube, but you know, it is just combined right now. If we were to smooth this, it wouldn't work because, you know, it's not actually joined together. That's why we put all the lines in. So now we can use a target weld and go ahead and weld these together. Now again, you could do this with a mesh merge, but you know, there's not many edges here. I quite like using this little target weld thing, and it makes sure that I get everything and doesn't cause any problems with any of the geometry merging because it's too close together or the merge threshold is slightly out, you know, etc., etc. Now, because we lined these up, this is now pretty much a doddle. But as I said, we did have to put some extra edges on both of these objects to get them to join together, and that will mean that if we look at the front of our object now, we have got a different number of edge loops than we did before we joined this together. So when it comes to cutting the cylinder in, we now know exactly how many edge loops that we need to be dealing with. Now let's look at this on the smooth view, object mode. And as you can see, this is now quite a complex object. We got too many edge loops in here. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but in this case I think we can probably get rid of a few. Let's take a wireframe unshaded. Yes, we've got some pinching happening in this corner because we've got a loop that's way too close together, and a couple here. But you know what I'm going to do with these? I'm just going to separate them and make them a bit nicer in terms of edge flow. We got pinching down here? No. Pinching here? No. So that's almost perfect right now. Okay, so in between these parts, I am going to take a look at just spreading these lines out so they're a bit more even. I'm going to see if I can get rid of any using the same techniques we've been using all the time. And just to see what this thing looks like before we go, I'm going to mirror it across. Now, as I said, in between the parts I will be taking a quick look at this to see if I can simplify it. I'm going to do that off camera, and when I come back I'll tell you if I've taken anything out or what I've moved. But let's just mirror this thing just to see what it looks like all in one part. So mesh, mirror. Okay, and let's see here. Alright, yeah, we moved the pivot point when we actually combined this object. The pivot point snapped into the center of the object, not into the center of the grid. So let's go back into the top view and snap it into the center of the grid. Okay, because we are central, and let's just make sure, since we've done now a merge two objects together. So select some verts, go, straighten them up. Same on this side, straighten them up. They were on this side straight, so now we're all perfect. Object and pivot, so W to move, insert to move the pivot, snap to grid up here, snap it up to the top, snap it into the middle, and you're done. Now let's mirror, which you can do on any view, of course, just using this one. Mesh, mirror, oops, you have to select something to mirror, of course, and that's one mirror operation done. So object mode, and let's come in here and do a mesh, mirror again, done, and of course we'll need to change the axis, so probably Z minus, yeah, there we go, that looks right. So Q, object, and let's smooth this, and you can see we're looking pretty good right now. There are some areas to tweak, of course, but that is a fairly complex shape. Considering we started from a box with just a few lines on it, to get this shape is, I say, fairly complex. So we'll now need to cut a cylinder in it. Cut a cylinder in this square here. So the final piece will look, let me just show you. So J, and rotate that like so. The final piece, whoops, I've got it on snap to grid, there we go, will look like this. So let's scale that up until it's about on there, and R to scale it, W to move it, so that comes back to about there. Underneath it bisects this hole, and of course it's duplicated on the other side. So when our geometry is finally finished, it will look like this. We're going to come back and we're going to look at joining this to this properly with merged vertices, and then we will be done with this rather complicated little block. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next part. Cheers. Hi, welcome back. So in the previous part we got our component here. Now I must say I'm quite happy with the smoothing, quite happy with the sharpness on these corners and the beveled look all the way around. So it does need a little bit of cleaning up, it needs a little bit of attention to where its edges are running, but it's just a case of moving vertex, especially around areas like this. So there should be a smoothing line here, and I can immediately see we can repurpose this line to become that smoothing line. Really just simple little things like this. Now normally I wait until I'm pretty much done with the model to go around and double check that I've got everything in the right place, but just that one was very obvious. So that becomes the smoothing line for this. Now we need to talk about how to finish this off. So we need to put a cylinder all the way through it, and we need to join a cylinder to this geometry. Now whichever way you look at this, this is going to be the trickiest complex object join we've done, because there's a lot of geometry here, there's a lot of geometry back here. We're going to have to cut a hole through this, cut a hole through this, cut a hole through this, cut a hole through this. So you know, this is a very tricky operation. So first things first, let's take a look at our reference here, and we can see that before we even start with the cylinder component, we need this little extruded box to pull the cylinder out of. Let's take the reference off. Now our whole front piece will become the little extruded box here. Okay, let's make sure we don't have any faces we don't need, any edges we don't need, otherwise the extrusion can go terribly wrong. Let's go to Modeling Toolkit and Extrude, get it to a central location and extrude it out, and let's just bring the reference back so we don't make any schoolboy errors. And up we go, and that looks about right to me. It's not a very big extrusion, maybe a tiny bit thicker. There we go. And divisions to 1, so we keep the geometry nice and simple. Now you'll notice when this extruded out, it extruded some extra faces along this edge, which will become mirrored. So just take care of those. Done. Hit the smooth view just to make sure nothing has gone hideously wrong. Get rid of the image planes. So no, that seems to have been a perfectly good extrusion. Now we need to work out what size cylinder we want in this. Now we want to try and keep the divisions low, but we also want to match the divisions on the surface. So if we say that we will keep this as a smoothing edge, and then we will use these edges to attach the cylinder from. So let's see, we actually have, if we count the smoothing edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have 11, so we'll give this a try with a 22-sided cylinder. That might be the easiest way to slip that in there. So I'm going to delete the history off this before I do anything. Now you can save the file before you do that, in case you might need to revisit that history at some point. But for me right now, I'm going to get on with the next stage, which means I don't want all that construction history cluttering up the workflow. So let's get a cylinder and make it 22 sides. So J to pull that down like so, and let's move it basically into place here. So let's get it wireframe unshaded would be handy. There we go. So let's get it so it's central. And so it's central to this as well, like so. And then we would count off the number of points we need to join this thing to. So we would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That should come as no surprise to anyone. And then points we would have are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that should work out quite fine, but we have 12 and 13 up here. So let's do this the simplest way possible. So first off, let's cut our cylinder in half so we're not dealing with a bunch of stuff that we don't need. So that is perfectly in half. Done. And I'm going to scale my cylinder out. Now I'm not going to get it to the correct size just yet, but I just want to make sure that we are bisecting all the geometry here. Okay, and let's just grab the verts on the back end and make sure that that cylinder would finish, you know, approximately there. And it's easier to grab these verts now and get them into place than it would be later. So, and this cylinder was a bit wider than that. Again, making it longer is just a case of grabbing these verts and scaling it out, so I'm not really going to pay too much attention. Now, let's cut some lines in this thing. So, obviously, if we leave that as a smoothing edge, let's first off combine these pieces together. Mesh, combine, where have you gone? I'm under Edit Mesh, there we go, Mesh Combine. And let's first off use the multi-cut tool to just do a bit of cutting around here. So let's cut here, 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 and we're not interested in accuracy right now. We just want to get these edges cut. So we are going to need one cut from here to here, and one cut from here to here. Okay, now let's go in and delete all the inner faces that we shouldn't need. Okay, so I don't think we'll need that one. In fact, we might need that one if we are going to have an extra smoothing edge. So let's just cut along there, and let's go into the bottom and do that same thing along here. So cut into the bottom here. Now we can get rid of these inside faces. It's not going to be very neat, but it doesn't really have to be at this point in the process. This is a slightly different way of cutting than we've done in the past. So again, Maya, more than one way to do pretty much everything. So delete those faces. Now, we need to start to think about how these edges are going to join up. So I'm actually going to organize some vertex at this point. Let's move this one up here. So this one becomes the join for this one. So those two would be joined together, and both become the join for that one. Then this one, and you can see this is doing a real number on my topology here, but again that can be organized a bit later on once we've moved all these kind of essential bits into place. So this one up here, and I actually moved the edge there. I don't want to be doing that, I just want to be moving the vertices. So, you know, get them, you don't need to get them spot on. Right now we're just having a look, making sure when we come to connect this fellow we don't have one of those aha moments that we've got, you know, far too much topology, not enough. Now we did count it of course, but there are room for error there. That's been more than a number of times I've counted it off and then come to join it together and gone, whoops. So that one there. This one is going to actually join with this one down here, like so, to make one vertex, and then this one is going to here. So those two together should be fine. That one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. And you know, we've done a real number on our geometry here, but it'll all be fine once we sort of move it up and get it organized. For right now, we just really want to check that we've got this okay. Yeah, that seems fine to me. So let's put an edge to cut to around here, and let's make sure we get this one accurate. So there. We can even this up later with the scaling trick, and we're going to be left with inside faces, but right now our main concern is getting this joined up. So let's use the target weld. Let's target weld those, let's target weld these, and then down here like so, and then this one to this one, this one to this one, this one to this one, 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 these together like so, this one up here, and this one up here. So that little bit of counting we've done there seems to have saved us a job of work. Now, we've got some geometry issues here. Let me just get all these in a straight line, so let me get the vertex, then we can really see what's going on. Okay, now I'm not going to worry too much about the geometry down here for a second. I'm going to come in and organize all that between the parts. All I'm going to do is space it out nice and evenly, so I don't think you need to watch me go through that process, and you will of course get the scene files with all the models in so you can have a look at the topology. But right now, you know, we're concentrating on cleanness, basically, on nice spacing, no problems with smoothing edges. Right, and something bizarre has happened here, and it's not that tricky. All that's happened is these points have been pulled away from the edge here. So actually, once we started to get it all straight and level, or straight and level-ish, it became quite easy to see that that smoothing edge there just got pulled a little bit out of shape. So again, now you can come in and start working on these, which I will do in between these parts because it's just a bit of a tedious process, and it's you know, it's very easy to just come in and straighten these up. So, but now it looks like we have our square perfectly joined on there. We have no grand topology issues, nothing really. Okay, now let's get on with the next bit. Let's multi-cut across here, like so, because we're going to need to join this to this, and there's going to be a whole bunch of faces inside the model that we don't need. So we don't need any of these. Now those don't go through to the bottom of the model, they don't, so delete. And now we have that nicely joined to that with no inside faces. This will be the faces for this part of the model, and this will be the faces for the bottom part. So let's get rid of this one and this one. Done. We do not need those. And we do not need any of these. Okay, done. So let's grab the bottom. I think we can probably just grab the bottom edge, convert that to a vertex selection, and move it up so it's level with this. Aha, no, we're going to need another vertex here. If I can see it, which of course I cannot. Okay, this one I think comes up. No, that was one too many. The thing is, we've got a face. We have this on here that's not necessary. Okay, so that was what was, yeah, that was what was causing an issue there. So let's pull this up, and let's get both sides of it while we're at it, and pull it up to there, and then this vertex up to there. We just want to get it even with the floor, or off the floor slightly. There we go. So now we know to cut this in, we can of course use this edge here. We're going to need another edge along there, and this edge is going to match, this edge is going to match this edge and this edge, but we're going to have to put another edge loop in. That's not so much of a problem. Right, let's select some faces. So that face would have to go, which means this, which means we're going to need another edge in there. Okay, but we can look at that in a minute. Let's check out the bottom one. So we can see that again we have this sizing issue, and again we're going to need to cut an edge loop in here like so, and let's just cut out these inside faces 1, 2, 3 and 4 because they are superfluous to requirements. That's the inside of the model, and this one is too big, so vertex, vertex, vertex. Just push this down until it just bisects the floor here. Now because we scaled that, it's going to need to be pulled inwards a bit just to form that cylindrical shape. Okay, and now we have face here that we don't need, but again it is too long, so I think I see, let's see, now this is holding a smoothing edge. So can we actually put an edge loop all the way across there without affecting too much geometry? In this case, I believe we can. So let's put that there. And yeah, we got an extra one here. It went over, no, it went straight over the center of our cylinder there. Okay, and we seem to have picked up another edge loop there that also has gone straight over our cylinder, which is not a good thing, so let's track that down. Okay, that's holding the smoothing control edge there, and that is actually holding the main edge there. So this one holding a smoothing control edge has got to go, and we'll redirect the edge flow a bit later. We don't want anything interfering with this. So we do need a smooth edge here, but we can always redirect the edge flow up and around somewhere. We'll look at that after we've got all our pieces lined up here. So Q, let's get a face, and okay, yeah, so we still have this issue. Now this can become extremely tricky. Sometimes you got to cheat. Sometimes you can spend a very, very long time redirecting edge flow on something. You know, it's not one of those things that is, you know, there is no hard and fast way. This is how you always do it. This always works. It is always a bit of pushing and shoving of edges and whatnot. So right now we need an edge loop in here, and we need an edge loop in here without going across the front of this. These need tidying up, and this one is perfectly joined. So we've got our cylinders basically in place right now. This one that runs through here, this one in the front, and this one on the bottom. Now we have a bit of work to tidy our edges up, but again we'll come back in and do that at the end, rather than trying to do it and then adding an extra loop and, you know, so on and so forth. But right now I'm going to call this part quits here, because we've been slicing the cylinder in now for probably about 15-20 minutes maybe, and I'm going to take a look at the topology of this and figure out a decent way to cut it in as simply as possible. Because as I say, this stuff, when you're cutting into complex objects like this with a lot of geometry, there is no simple just do it like this, because we've got, you know, certain conditions here that make cutting edge loops quite difficult. So, you know, I can actually cut one round here for this, or does it go over? No. So for this one, for example, that one will be rather easy, and that can then be used as a smoothing edge loop, and then the faces here can be chopped. It hasn't gone over the top of this one, but it has gone down through this one, so that's no good. So again, we've got a very limited model in the regard of we can't put any extra edges in here, we can't put any extra edges in here, we can't have any extra edges going across here, we can't have any extra edges going across here. So edge flow now becomes really rather tricky, and you know, it might be a case of we're just going to have to live with an edge, say, in the middle of the hole where you couldn't really see it. So I'll be back in the next part. I'm just going to take 10 minutes and have a look around at some good ways to do this, and I'll see you in that part when we'll finish this big beastie off. Thank you very much for watching. Hi, welcome back. So in the previous part we joined most of our geometry together now at the front here, and we're just left with these four faces and these. So this half of a quarter of a cylinder, I'd say, just about, and this one down here too. Now this might look trivial, but I can assure you it's not. It's at this point, as your model gets more and more complex, that you can really end up running into problems. So let's examine what needs to happen here. Now, as this is a cylinder, it will need a smoothing control here along this face and a smoothing control along this face. Well, this one's no problem. We've got an edge there, so we could just come in and multi-cut. In fact, we can multi-cut again and multi-cut again to line all these up. This is nice and simple. Easy, in fact. Now, let's cut here, press Shift and lock it to 85%, and let's put a smoothing edge around here. So always 85%, well, not always, but in this particular instance. Now we start to run into a bit of trouble, because we've got no edge here to put it to. So for the smoothing edge, we can repurpose this edge here that's not doing a lot and shove it over here, like so. So let's just grab the edge. So edge, whoops, I've got the multi-cut tool on, just press Q. Okay, and I'm not going to worry about the topology around it for now, and I'm just going to shove it over here. So, you'd need to do a bit of cleanup with this. I'm probably going to do that in between the parts because it's just all about getting these edges to be, nice, nice lines. So you don't want long faces where you can help it. You don't want too sharp an angle, things like that. So I'll clean up in between the parts. I think you've seen me do it before. It's not that interesting to watch, and it's fairly simple to do. So. Okay, but right now we've got this edge that can be held by this edge. We've got this edge that can be held by this edge. We'll need something to hold this edge, but also we'll need another edge in there to help control the smooth of this, because we don't want this being smooth between here and here. We need another edge. So this edge can be slightly repurposed. Now it's holding a smooth here, but if we move the bottom out to hold the smooth there, so let's take it and edge mode, of course, and move the bottom out. Okay, this can be used to hold the edge here. Now it's not a perfect solution, and again, you do need to come in here and sort these lines out so they're, so we get a fairly even spacing, see? And you'd need to do this for everything, and this is the job for the end of the model for me. I like to come in at the end and make sure all my geo is nice and placed well. Now this is not perfect because we're going to have a slight issue on the smooth there, but it's practically invisible. So sometimes it's a bit of a trade-off. This is actually okay. I mean, you could split the difference between the two even like so, and you would get to a situation where you just couldn't see it. I mean, you just can't see there's an artifact there. So in this case, that will be more than good enough to hold that edge and hold that edge. Now, we need an edge in here, and herein to hold this edge too. Because if we try and cut this face out at the moment, so this one, you'll see that we'd have to move this all the way over there, and this is our smoothing control edge, and then we would no longer have that edge. So we need to put another one in. But if we come in with a multi-cut, and let me zoom out, if we come in with a multi-cut, you can see that cuts straight down my cylinder, which is not a good thing. Because once we cut in extra lines on the cylinder, let me just go to object mode, once we start cutting extra lines in here, it's no longer going to be cylindrical. It's the same reason we can't cut across this one, it's the same reason we can't cut across this one, and it's the same reason we can't cut it in edge loops around this one. We are, however, going to need a smoothing edge control around here, and if you'll notice, if we put this edge in, it does that for us. Or, it gets us most of the way there. So, in this case, we are going to cut down the cylinder, and then we're going to fix it. So come in here and put the line in. So now we've got a line to cut this out to. But that line goes down here into our cylinder. So we can't have that. We're going to have to cut it out. So take the edge and cut rid of it, like so. Now, problem, of course, is that that's going to leave you an n-gon here, but we'll come back and fix that. For right now, just get rid of this line out of your lovely cylinder, or you're going to run into trouble. So we don't want it here either. And come on, Maya, there we go. Lost the camera for a minute there. We don't want it here. No. And we don't want it down here either. No need for it. So we can kind of come in and terminate it, say, here. So let's delete an edge. And the reason we terminate it here is because it's a flat surface in between two smoothing controls. So this surface is not going to deform, which, is very nice for us. So let's fix it now, because it's an n-gon. So multi-cut in, go here, here. Just thinking of the best way to fix this. Then all the way to the bottom. And then from here to here, and that should fix it. So as you can see, we've got 4 sides here, 4 sides here, 4 sides here, 4 sides here, and we've managed to terminate the line. So that line is now terminated, and it's okay. Alright, that's the cylinder on the bottom, so it hasn't been joined up yet. But yeah, that's perfectly terminated, and if we smooth this, you'll see that in the quad view, in the smooth view with the wireframe on, you can see that this wouldn't smooth as well. You can see this like kink in it. This wouldn't smooth as well as perhaps a perfectly straight line, but because it's on a flat surface that doesn't deform, i.e. it's not part of the smoothing curve, we cannot see it at all. It might as well not be there. So that's, in this particular instance, this is a good place to terminate that geometry. Now we're going to have to do a similar thing at the top, because again here we have an n-gon. So let's kill this edge off, delete this edge, but you'll notice here we're on a completely flat surface, so this is going to deform between here and here, this is going to deform between here and here, this is not going to deform at all. So this would make this about perfect. So let's come up with a multi-cut tool, cut here, cut all the way down to the bottom, and then we should be able to fix that by just going like so. Okay, 4, 4, 4, 4, and 4. So we've managed to terminate those lines without detracting from our smoothing. I mean, you cannot see that, the result of this, up here, because this is staying completely flat. So it has no effect. Now, we're still all nice and quadded, so we're not going to have problems when we animate this, when we do some dynamics with it. You know, so terminating those lines there is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, having a look around, that would probably be the best place to do it. And again, you need to come in and clean these lines up, because this should be nice and straight, this should be nice and straight, this should be nice and straight, and all these you should try and make, you know, of an equal size. But more of that between the parts. So let's move this guy up so he's here. Okay, and now we can start deleting some faces from the inside of this thing. Okay, so let's delete these ones. So face, 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 and face, because that would otherwise be stuck inside the model there. And can we delete these yet? No, no, we can't. So let's come up and use what vertex we have. So that one would be there, that one would be there. Now, let's see. Oops. Now, you don't want to do that. Can we use this one for anything? No. No, we can't. So we are actually going to need to put another edge loop in here. So multi-cut around the thing. Let's see. Let me just undo that. So multi-cut around it. Okay, we just zoom out so I can see where that's going. And will that actually do it? Okay, let me just multi-cut here a second so I can get this clear in my head. That's going to have to be cut out, that's going to have to be cut out, and that's going to have to be cut out. So we're going to look something like that. Face, Q, done, 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 done. Let's get rid of all of those, delete, and yeah, we need a loop here that's going to connect to this vert. So multi-cut, done, and make sure that that hasn't gone over. So I'm just going to press Q, edge mode, select it, and follow it round. No, it hasn't gone over the cylinder. There's a bit too much geo up here now maybe, but again we can space that out nicely so it doesn't have much of an effect. And multi-cut, and here and here. When you're modeling something that's gotten this kind of complex, there is just compromises to be made. You know, if you can't see it on the end result, then it's not going to matter. If it's all quadded and your geometry is quite nicely evenly spaced, there is no such thing as an absolutely perfect model when it comes to something this complicated. But this one, you know, it's perfectly acceptable. It would be perfectly fine for animation, for, you know, rendering purposes, for simulation purposes, and that's really what we want. We want to create good reusable geometry that's all in quads and, you know, acceptable. And that's what we've got here. So let's just target weld these things together. Now I'm going to weld might be better inside the model. So let's get this and target weld it to that. Done. And this to that. Done. This to that. Done. Sometimes it's easier from the inside of the model. Sometimes not. It's Maya. Sometimes it's just exceptionally complicated no matter what you do. So let's come in and get this one to this one. There we go. This one to this one. There we go. Then just keep welding it together. And we should be on a winner here. So I think that's fully put together. A smooth will tell us. Let's go off target weld. And let's have a look. So object mode. Okay, that's not bad really. So we managed to cut that in okay. There is a bit of triangle. There you go. So that's why you don't leave tries on a deformable surface, because you can spot them from a mile away. So you can see immediately triangle. But other than that triangle, this turned out pretty well, really. Now we've got some deformation going on here. We need a smoothing control edge around here, which again, because this is just a box, that will be easy. Done and done. That look much better. And then at the back here, we've got to get rid of that. Is that actually a triangle? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it is. Okay, so we need to get rid of this triangle. Okay, so fixing this triangle here. Let me see the surrounding geometry. We could cut another edge loop in here, which would give us a quad, but that would be... yup. Let's just grab it, merge it with this one, and that should solve it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That does indeed solve it. So that's done. Let's have a look at it smooth now. Let's come off target weld and into object mode, click away, and as you can see, now that's not obvious that there's, you know, that's much nicer now. Let's have a look how it could be made a bit better. Now it could be made a bit nicer with a smoothing control edge around here, but that is going to end up being, yeah, let's see, how easy would that be to cut in? That would leave us with a triangle there. Let's just cut this in a second. And we've got the triangle there, but they're always fixable. So let's hit 3 and turn and see if that makes us look any better. Okay. No, to be brutally frank, I do not think that would be worth the effort of even cutting in. No, that's not going to provide us really anything we need, so let's just take it out, get rid of the extra geometry, the extra complexity, and you know, if you decide you need one, we can always look at putting it back in, but for me, let's have a look. Okay, yeah, that's good enough. Yeah, this could be a bit flatter though. Let's have a look at that. And you know, this could just probably be because this edge needs moving up a bit. So vertex, let's move this up a bit, get it a bit straighter like so. And again, possibly move this edge up a bit. Okay. Ah, yeah. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's a nice cut in. This comes in now. Yep, you know what, I quite like that. We've got one more piece to join together down here. But before we do that, I think I'm going to take a look at what this thing looks like mirrored over when this cylinder's whole. So let's make sure it's dead straight where we're going to mirror it. So vertex mode. Let's come in, let's select all the verts along here. And let's make sure we've got the ones we need. Yes, we do. Okay, R. Just make sure it's all nice and flat. Object mode, and let's mirror this across and see what this looks like as a whole. Because I just want to check that before we go any further. So that's going to be Z probably. So pivot's in the wrong place now. So grid and top view. And snap that pivot here. So insert, snap to grid, shove it over there, there we go, insert again, mesh mirror. Okay, and that's mirrored in the wrong axis. I don't want that mirroring operation there. Would you go, thank you, Z. Okay, and we need to set that to negative. This is just not playing today. There we go. Jobs are good, and as they say. Let's get a look at this in the orthographic view, panels perspective, in the perspective view, sorry. Panels perspective, perspective. Turn the grid off. Let's smooth it. And yeah, that is looking fantastic. Wait, oh yes, this is the bottom one we haven't joined in yet. And you see it sticks out like a sore thumb. This is just kind of bisected geometry in the middle of the model now. And you know, when you roll over this one, you go, ah, yeah, you know, some sort of injection molded plastic here. You know, nice sunken together edges. And then you roll past this one, you immediately go, what on earth is that? Yes. So this is why we get the problems of, you know, merging things like this together. I'm just checking for any nasty edges on this thing, and I don't really see any. So I am quite happy. We just have this bit on the bottom to do, and we'll be back to do that. Then there is a little cutout bit on this, so we'll have a look at that. Shouldn't take too long. We'll mirror this across into one final piece, and we should be good to go. Hi, welcome back. So we have now one last part of this cylinder to join to the model, and you know, it's a general bit of cleanup to do by shoving some edges around. Now I can just see here we can delete those two edges on our sphere and instantly make this a quad. So that's a bit neater, gives us less to organize, and we can probably do the same here, but we'll look at that later. For right now, we want to get the last part of this done. So if we come in and look at this one here, there's just four faces here really that need joining up, and if we look at this, this should be fairly simple as these things go. If I look inside, I've got an edge here that can be used to hold this edge. This one can connect to this one to this one, this one to this one, and this one to this one. Now if I look at the other side, it appears to be a lot more complicated, but if we spin the model around, you can see that we have the same edges on both sides. It's just some of these are higher up. So let's count our edges. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you'll notice if we go back here that 1, 2, 3 of these are not part of this gully. So we can actually, in order to simplify this for ourselves, and you're always looking for ways to simplify, so we'll make both sides approximately the same. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's go here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's move this one up. Now you don't want to click the whole edge loop in this case. We're going to move it up from here to double click the end of that loop here, and let's shove it up out the way for now. We can always rearrange this. So same with this one. Let's go from here to here, and we're just trying to make this visually similar at the moment, and again you can always rearrange it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this one needs to come up to the same level as the fifth one on the other side, so about there. So up to the top here. Okay, making sure we're not doing anything too nasty over there. And then this one as well. And you can move these down after you've welded your part in. Come up to here. So at the moment then we would have one here for this edge. So let's keep that one there. One slightly above it for this edge. So let's take this edge loop, and yeah, you can see that's the edge loop running around here to connect to this one. So let's take it from here and here and just move it up to here, so it's at the same level as this one. Now you'll notice over here that that's gone a bit wonky, but we're going to come back in and adjust that. Right now we're just trying to make our lives a bit easier. So let's take this one. You know, and a lot of this is just about preparation. So you can't come in and just start cutting willy-nilly all over the place. A lot of the time you do need to prep this. Okay, so let's join this side up. So the first thing we need is this edge. So let's take it, pull it out this way, and in fact let's take that whole edge. So let's grab this one here, I believe it's connected to, yes it is, this one, and it should be the same on the other side. This one here, let's do a vertex selection and pull them this way a bit. So we just pull that whole thing out like so, and then we have a supporting edge here to connect this edge to. So now we don't need those inner faces. Let's get rid of those. One here and one here. Okay, so we have a nice easy join there. Now we have to decide where to join this up to. So that one could join up to there, that one could join up to there, that one down, and that one down. Okay, this should be fairly simple then. So let's give it a go. So let's select vertex mode, target weld, let's weld this one down here. Okay, this one up to here, and my edges here are exactly aligned, so I don't need to worry too much about this pulling the geometry out of shape. Then we're going to need to cut some faces here. No, that's alright, multi-cut, so just cut over from here to here to here, like so, and again, not quad draw, target weld, and up to here, and down to here. Now we have a whole bunch of faces on the inside we can actually get rid of, because again, inside faces in a model, bad news, done. And now all we need to do is the same on the other side, and we are finished with this big beast of a piece. Well, apart from some small organization and whatnot, and I believe there might be a little bit extrusion work needed doing up here, but we'll take care of that in a second. So again, let's put it onto vertex mode so we can see what we're welding together, and target weld, and I've got one here to here. That's done that one. One here to here. That's done that one, and I think on this side we joined this one to this one. We did. And let's see, where is this? On this side we can actually join, rather than cutting a face in here, we could, I believe, let's make it identical on both sides, because we can just take this here. Let's just do this. Okay, that doesn't want to. I'm going to have to go to the inside of the model here, so let's take this one and join it up here. And that's not going to give us a triangle, is it? No. Okay. And then this one should be easy to join to here, and is that going to give us a triangle? Yes, it is. So it would have to be this one from up here to here, and that's not. So let's delete those inside faces. Again, a lot of this is just about planning, and you know, don't get me wrong, this is a very difficult thing to do. it's not in any way, shape or form simple. So let's put some edge loops in to hold the edge, making sure we don't do anything nasty in the process. So one here and one here. Should just about do it on this. Now let's flick around the other side, and yeah, we got a whole bunch of loops going down here that will need a bit of organization, but let's just smooth and see how we get on. Oh, so I'm going to hit Q and go off that. Okay, yeah, we need the edges held here. That's not good. So we need the edges held there. So let's repurpose. We're going to have trouble repurposing that edge. Or are we? Yeah, because that's holding us smooth here. And if we go right across, we're going to end up with a termination problem. Okay. Okay, let's see. And I'm not liking this geometry here much. So let's take the edge. And yeah, we're going to need to monkey around with this. This is not particularly nice. And this edge here is way too close to this one. So let's select its verts. And where can we move it up from? Here. And again, just get these a bit equidistant. This is something I'll go through in between the parts. If it's not really affecting your smoothing, because we have no deformations on this, it's not really a huge issue. Whoops. That definitely went the wrong handle. There we go. Okay, that's a bit better. Alright, now, how are we going to solve this issue here? Tricky one. Whoops. Okay, so I need to put a smoothing loop in here. So multi-cut and smooth, but that is going to be an issue for us. Let's see where it goes. Come on. Okay, so no, actually that's not going to be an issue for us. Luckily enough, that's going to cut around the front but not cut on the cylinder. And where we retargeted our geometry here, we changed the edge flow, so that's just going to go off and run down the side there. So let's do that. And actually we end up with a smoothing edge, with an extra smoothing edge here, and with some extra lines here, which is on a flat surface that doesn't smooth, so that should be absolutely fine. Let's see, what else do we need? Okay, we could do with another smoothing edge around here, because it's not holding very well. It's holding fine on that side because you can see all the edges, but on this side not so much. So actually we don't need to do anything fancy here. We can repurpose this edge, bring it down and use that to hold the smooth. And again, now we just need to organize these edges up here to come in and help us hold the smooth. It's because we're all a bit higgledy-piggledy here. So let's get the vertex here, move it like so, get this vertex, move it like so, this one, move it like so. Okay. Move handle is in the way, excuse me. There we go. Let's see if that holds the smooth any better, and indeed that holds the smooth just fine, I think. So, you know, if you wanted it crisper, you would need to come in and organize your edges a little better, which again I'm going to do between the parts because it's not a particularly interesting thing to watch, I think. And this has been a very, very complicated part to build. You know, we are doing an introduction to Maya tutorial here, so this actually has turned out to be extremely complex for that. So I'm going to rearrange the topology of this in between these parts, and you can come back and have a look at it, you know, just so it's nice and neat. Now let's see if we can take out every second edge here. One. I'm not too concerned about the triangles on the front of this thing, to be brutally honest, but delete edge, and we have a quad, 1, 2, 3. Actually we have a triangle there. and a triangle there and quads there. You know what, when that's mirrored across, of course, it will become a quad. So because this is going to get mirrored, it should become a quad. Then we need to take out that edge and that edge when we've mirrored it, and it should go back into quads, so that shouldn't be an issue. Let's see it on the smooth view. Okay, and to be frank, I'm pretty happy with that. There's a little bit of organization in the lines that could be done. You know, it could be a little neater, but it looks great smoothed, really does. So for a part this complex, I mean, that is quite nice. Okay, now I do remember seeing on the reference as well that this thing here has an extrusion at the end of it. So let's do that. Now we have an edge here that's controlling smoothing. Let's just move it back a bit and extrude this. So edge, we're gonna, sorry, face, we're gonna come in, click this one, and we're just gonna do a simple extrude. Now this one will be a scaled extrude, so click to get it in the middle, click the scale, and we want to extrude on two axes, in this case Z and X. So if we press Control and scale up this one, no, that one's not going to do it. No. There we go. So if we scale in X, you can see that we scale up in the axis we need. Okay, because yeah, we are doing actually a Y because we need to go up, and Z. So if you hold Control, let's do that again, hold Control and scale in X, that will scale the other two uniformly. So let's get the divisions back to here, and this of course is now not straight, so let's take the vertex here, 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 and in fact let's do this from a different camera view. So we need all these to be straight here. Let's get them all. Actually, that's the wrong camera view. We need this one, and we need all these verts down here to be straight. So R to scale them, just scale them together. And now we'll need to snap that back to the center of the grid. So W to move, snap onto the grid, and just move it up one, and there we go. So now we're perfectly back into place without all aligned. Okay, and now we have this extrusion. Now because it's an extrusion, it will need, once again, something to hold it in place. So one here, one here. Now this is a very small extrusion, so let's get the smoothing edges as close as we can. One here, one here, one here, and that should do it just fine. So let's hit 3 and see how that extrusion smooths. That's absolutely fine, it looks like. Yep. Now we've got a bit of pinching here, and because we've got some faces that we don't need. Okay, so let's smooth again, and Q, and object mode, done. Yeah, that looks like it. It might be a bit short in comparison to the reference, but you know, if you need to make it longer, grab all the verts and move them out a bit. We are snapped to the actual grid, so you know, making this thing longer is really not a big issue, or shorter depending on the reference. And right, I'm just going to save this. Save scene as part 18, and there we go. So save as, just so I have it saved. Now I'm going to edit, delete by type, history. There we go. So there's no history on this object, and we should now be able to mirror it and see our final piece. So mesh mirror, there we go. So it's mirrored in one direction. Take the history off it again, edit, delete by type, history, because we don't want that mirror operation on there. So mesh, mirror once again, and just change the axis here. So direction would be negative in this case. There we go. And we can see how the geometry all works together. So Q, and delete its history again. You can use the menu up here, or spacebar for the hotbox, of course. History, done. We've got one nice clean object. It's nice and smooth. It looks wonderful. Hi, welcome back. So once again we are with our very complicated part, and I'm sorry about this, but I've made a slight error that I thought I would bring to your attention. These tubes here have a slit in them. So if we go on to a different view here, we can see on the reference that these tubes here have a cut in them. Now this is not particularly difficult to do, so we're just going to do that before we do anything else. And also we're pretty bang on to the reference here. But our tubes aren't long enough. So let's take the vertex, and again I'm just going to work on one half. I'm going to cut this in half and mirror it over. So I'm just going to concentrate on this half while ignoring that one. Okay, so we've got our vertex here at length for reference. Let's just fling this around and cut a groove in it to match this one here. Now let's see, we can just actually take this edge here and move it back to where the groove would start. Now I've got smooth view on, so obviously that's going to be affecting our smoothing, which we'll come in and look at in a second. I'm going to flick the image planes off, and this will actually be the final part of this now. Now we can cut a hole here and here all the way through until we get to the center. So, you know, as an idea, we'll just take these edges and get rid of them, because we can retopologize this in a second. And again, a lot of the time it's easier just to come in and delete a bunch of stuff you don't need and figure it out a bit later. So I'm going to multi-cut from here to here, and this will be the channel for the slot we're going to make. So here to here. And now it's actually, cool, didn't mean to hit spacebar there, cute. Now it's actually quite a simple process. Let's select some faces. These are the ones we need to delete. So let's come in and get rid of all of this stuff. So we're just going to cut a big hole in this. And this will have the added benefit of putting our model back into symmetry and X and Z. So we will be able to then cut it into quarters again and work on just a quarter, which again, if you can get back to symmetry on 2 axes or even 3, you should. So this has a few benefits for us. It will make the model easier to work on if we need to come back in and tweak something, and also it'll make it spot on to the reference, which is what we generally look for. Right, let's delete that. We have a hole. Aha, missed a couple. Not an issue. Done. And now we just need to cover the hole up. So we'll use the trusty bridging tool here. Bridge. And let's do these 3 all at the same time. So 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And bridge. Same on the bottom. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. You could probably do these all at the same time, which would be, oops, I have a wrong edge, which would be faster, but when it comes to the bridging tool, I don't like to give it too much leeway. You can end up with bad geometry that way, as it's had a bit of a conniption, which it does. Whoops. Now Maya's having a bit of a fit. I've got anti-aliasing turned on in viewport 2, and I think that's really slowing me down here with the screen recording software on. So let me just find the anti-aliasing and turn it off. Anti-aliasing in viewport 2 is a really nice way to look at a finished model, but it can really slow you down. So I got all those. I did. And I'll need to bridge this one edge. So this big one, bridge, and then this big one, bridge. So you can see we cut a hole, and now we're just filling it in with the bridging tool. Nothing to it really. I get these ones on this side. Now in this case, as I'm getting this back to perfect symmetry, I only actually need to do one side of this, but I really want to see what it looks like, so I'll just do both at once. You know, it is a bit slower, but a minute or 2. We're not talking anything that would interrupt your workflow really. Bridge, okay, and we need to get these verts now back level. So let's come into a view that we can see them on. This one will be fine, and select all these vertices here, R to scale them, and let's get them level. Now you see that tapered inwards slightly, so we could actually move it back out until it's perfectly straight. There we go, done. I'm going to want an inward taper in this at one point anyway, because the purpose of this hole, I believe, is so our Lego bricks here when we put the wheel on, this can compress. So after a lot of use, this might be slightly compressed. So I think it'd be a nice thing if we just moved them in slightly so they were slightly compressed. But let's sort topology out first. Right, so we're kind of okay around here. But we do have some hole there at the back, which is a fairly simple bridging operation. If you can select the right edges. I'm a bit ham-fisted today. Bridge, there we go. Now we're all together. Now, we have this problem with the front. So we're going to need a multi-cut here to smooth that edge out nicely. So one there. And we'll need a multi-cut to smooth that edge out nicely. So between there and there we want to smooth. And this gives us some geometry to work with. So let's go back to vertex mode because it's easier to see. And now we can cut from here to here. And this becomes a quad. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can do that on all sides. And actually this one is one of the more simple things to retopologize. So again, quads, quads, quads. Always quads. And now we just have 1, 2, 3 that need connecting up, which can actually be quite a simple operation. 1, because this edge loop is only running around the inside of this thing now. It makes it very, very simple to come in, do this. Again, take a bit of time in the side view to get them a bit more level, but for us, this will be absolutely fine. So 1, 2, 3, and after I've done, I'll cut this back into quarters and mirror it again, so the geometry on both sides is absolutely equal. For right now, I'm just doing the two sides so I can get an idea of what it looks like and make sure it works. So now that's our hole in the front. You can succinctly say there is a nice hole in the front there. If we smooth it, it's going to have some issues. Probably not as many as you might think. That's not being held here. And this looks a bit... Now, because the hole is so big, this doesn't look quite so round. So we're going to move these in together. Let's take care of this smooth here. And it's very obvious to see why. There's no holding edge loop here. There's also no holding edge loop here. And there's no holding edge loop here. So again, this turned out to be a lot simpler than you might think. Sometimes it is. It's just you get a nice edge flow, and you know it turns out to be quite easy. Now we've got a huge smoothing error here and here, and I've just seen why. We've got edge loops running across the top, but none running down the sides. So let's go in and use the multi-cut tool to put 1 and 2, and the same on the other side. 1 and 2. Now those won't actually be joined together. So if we do a smooth, we're still going to have an issue, because even though we put an edge loop down here, if we can zoom in, you can see they're not actually joined together. So your target weld tool will be required to weld those together. So do all of them, 1 and 2, there we go. And the ones on the bottom, so if you're having trouble getting the camera to focus in, you can actually click on a vertex. So let's go, or whatever you want to focus in on, and hit F, and then that will be much easier. So target weld, 1 and 2. This one's very close together. Nope, 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 nope. Let's undo that last operation because I think I got a bad weld in there. There we go. And this one, which is no, 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 no. Stop it. Okay, I'm having huge problems seeing this one. Okay, so in this case, we're going to have to grab this vert, move it out, make sure it didn't merge. It's not merged, certainly. So it might be a better idea to look at this from the inside of the model. Okay, target weld. Can we get it from in here? No, I don't believe we can. So in this case, it might be a better idea, whoops, sorry, camera's gone haywire, just to select both of these vertices here. Make sure you've just selected those and just do a edit mesh merge. There we go, with a merge threshold that's a bit larger. Done. Vertex, check it's merged. It has merged. Check it on the smooth. Okay, and that seems to have smoothed okay. Yeah, so on the 3 view, those have definitely merged in together. It's not an issue. Check the top ones, done, and do the same on this side. So this can be a little time consuming, and this time we can just go vertex, select these ones, and hit G to repeat the last command, which was mesh merge. These ones can be easily target welded together, done. Whoops, I still had a vertex selected here. Make sure you have nothing selected before you do that, done. And let's check out the bottom. There we go, and these ones again are close together, so we're just going to have to snag them both. Hit W, make sure you remove cursor, hit F to focus in here, there we go. Make sure you've only selected those two vertex, and mesh merge, edit mesh, sorry. Okay, I could see they dropped in, so that distance threshold was fine. Object mode, let's check out our smoothing now. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Let's just check this out on the one view. Now, we could do with a couple more lines to hold this part and this part to stop that extreme smooth that happens here. Let's see this now. Yep, that's much better. So let's just hit Q and go off and have a look at it. Object mode. And yeah, that looks absolutely fine to me. So one last thing I want to do, because this would be compressed over the times it's been played with, and I personally think it looks quite nice, I just want to select all these vertex down here and move them inwards this way a bit. Now let's see if we can grab this on the symmetry. So object Z probably, yeah, we can. So move one in and that will move the other in. Just go like so, and hit R to scale. And I want to scale these in because now we've made them, you know, we've got this hole in it, doesn't look quite round anymore, so let's make that look quite round. Now, that will be slightly off reference, but personally I think that gives it a much nicer look, and that also gives us a center line here, so we can now once again cut this into quarters. So, you know, a couple of benefits. One, we are much more on reference, the part looks much nicer. It's added an extra level of complexity without actually having to do much, and we're back in symmetry on the X and Z. So now my advice would be cut it into quarters again, mirror it across so you have an entirely symmetrical model once again, delete the history off it, and you are done. Okay, so we are done, and one thing I've just noticed, I've come back from a separate recording here. While I was watching this tutorial back, in part 2 we end up having to, or I ended up having to completely rebuild this model because both Maya and my recording software had a bit of a conniption. So in that original model, in part 2, we actually fixed these n-gons here because they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sided. So we fixed them, and it's an extremely simple fix by just target welding this to here. So we've got there an extremely simple fix because now we're all quadded again, and again, well, you're dealing with quarter of the model, so you wouldn't need to do this, and again here and here. Now when we originally built this, it was all quadded. It's just the version that I built after Maya crashed and I lost my scene file that I actually missed that step. So you know, it doesn't make a huge deal of difference. In fact, it makes no difference to the finished object. I didn't want to leave you guys with a few n-gons in the middle. If you've been noticing those, I'm going to put an addendum on part 2, now I've noticed it, saying, you know, my rebuilt object was slightly wrong. But it's fine. I mean, it didn't affect how this modeled, it didn't affect how our edge loops went. So really, it's one of those things that it's nice to have it fixed, but it hasn't caused us any issues. So I'm going to come back in the next part when we'll look at the wheels. Now we've covered these in volume 1, but in case you haven't seen that, you can watch it here as well, and after that we'll finally be back to finish off the car build, which I will do on camera for you. I'll also have a build animation that you can watch, you should be able to find with the scene files, called build animation, that will show you how to put that together as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Hi, welcome back. So in this part, we're going to take a look at building this wheel here, and if we dip into the top view, you'll see I've brought the reference in already. Of course, we've done that enough times now, I think, but we need to make this wheel with some of these holes in it. So we need to make the spokes. So if we count them round, there's actually 8 of them, and then these holes are twice the width of these spokes. So if we did 16 radius divisions on a cylinder, we would get the same size holes as spokes, but if we do 24 radius divisions, we should get the size about right. So I'm going to pull it up to here, like so. Okay, and now we can start to do our radius divisions. If we set this to 24, you'll see that kind of makes sense. So, whoops, I set that to 14. 24. So spoke, double hole, spoke, double for the hole, spoke, double for the hole. So let's do this in a quarter. So let's select the faces here and come on down and delete this half, let's say, and then we'll delete this half. Okay, so we're just working on a quarter, so we don't have to cut in any ultra long edge loops. Let's go to the modeling toolkit and start cutting some edge loops. So let's cut this one first. So about 85%, I would say. Okay, and then enter to finish that loop. And then let's cut up here to about 75%. As close as you can to the reference. I mean, it's not critical. Done. And here, so if we lock it, that's about 50%. So let's cut all the way around, and for some reason it's not letting me. I'm going to start that one again. So Control Z, and up here, what did we say? 50%. Yeah, let's cut again. Okay, it's really not allowing me to do this. I'm obviously cutting on the wrong vertex because we've got X-ray on. I must be hitting one of these bottom verts through the model. So I'm going to turn off X-ray, so I can't do that by accident. Now that technically shouldn't happen, but welcome to the wonderful world of Maya. So 75, 75, 75, 75, 75, 75, and 75. And again here. So enter to finish the tool. I thought it'd start to happen again then. It has. Okay, there's something gone seriously wonky with this already. Now I'm not sure what it is, but we can troubleshoot a bit. We can basically come in here, and I'm going to select these vertices down here, and I'm going to see if there's a one that's out, and there is. That's normally the key. So I've gone at some point with that multi-cut tool and accidentally put a vertex down here, and now that's the one it wants to select. So if you run into those sort of problems, they're normally quite easy to sort out. They can be a little frustrating though. So 50, yeah, there we go. So just a vertex that had got accidentally put on the bottom of the model. Okay, pain in the backside, but there we go. So we can start our other cut about 50, 45, I would say. Now these are, whoops, I got that one at 40. These are easy enough to change later on. So, you know, if you've come back and there's been a bit of an error, that's not such a huge issue. Okay, enter to finish that loop and turn on the X-ray. And now we can see we can just cut a hole here, 2 holes here, and a hole here, and we will be good. So let's come in and let's get this done. So face, 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 done, 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 done. And that forms the basis of our wheel spokes. So hole, hole, spoke, 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 so on and so forth. Now I'm going to bring up the bottom just a little bit so we're not, you know, dealing with this massively fat tire here. Okay, a little bit more maybe. So it's like so. And then what we're going to have to do now is this is going to form the back part of the wheel because they're different, which makes this whole thing quite a bit trickier. So let's mirror this first. So mesh mirror, check our pivot point first off. It should be in the center of the object. So let's hit insert, hit W to move, I, insert, and align this somewhere in the middle. So that vertex point right there will do. Q, mesh mirror. Okay, Watch your merge threshold, it's way too high. 0.02 should do it in this case. So that seems to be fine. Check the back of the object, that also seems to be fine. So object mode. Okay, now we need to mirror it again, so let's delete the history. So edit, that's edit, delete by type, history, and let's mirror once more, this time in Z. So let's get the axis right, Z, and again watch your merge threshold. You see all this has collapsed and gone bonkers. 0.02 should be absolutely fine for something like this. There we go. And now we want to extrude all of this top geometry upwards. So we're actually going to not extrude it all. Let's have a look at the reference for a second, because this is on an indentation. So let's grab these faces, these faces, these faces, and these faces. Now let's make sure we haven't grabbed any on the back or any of the sides. We haven't. Extrude. Let's extrude upwards like so. These spokes are actually quite thin on the Lego model. So they are kind of like so. Okay, so that should do it for that extrusion operation. Just click away, so we've cleared it. And then around the outside is a lip for the tire. So let's extrude upwards and give that a little lip. Again, divisions 1, because we want to keep our geometry nice and neat. And that is basically the Lego tire, the Lego wheel, not the Lego tire, sorry. And now we have to put the back of this thing on. So let's change the reference to the back image. Let's go to the attribute editor and change to the back. There we go, and you can see the back in there. Now we're going to move this above because we're going to be looking at it from the bottom camera now. So let's look at this from the bottom camera, panels, perspective, where do we want to go here, orthographic, bottom. Now we can see it from the bottom. Let's turn off the X-ray so we can see that this hole cut here is in the same location as is on the front, and this rim of course is in the same place. So let's go shading, X-ray off. Now that's going to give us a bit of an issue, because now we can't see through to our image plane. Let me turn the grid off here because that's just getting in the way. And let me move this image plane so it goes down a bit. Okay, so yeah, we're going to have to do this with the X-ray on. So shading X-ray, which is going to be a bit more confusing. So we're going to select the top, or the bottom in this case, and in this case I'm just going to make this a circular hole. So really I want to just cut along the same guide. So let's go to the modeling toolkit, multi-cut, and I'm going to cut in here 35% to start the hole, 35, 35, 35. Now I know it's not completely circular, but I don't want to get into too much detailing with this. It's a very small tire, so I'm just going to make mine a bit simpler than the reference. There are Lego wheels that are just round holes like this, so it's not like you can look at it and say, oh, that's not Lego. It's just a little simpler here. And close it up. Done. So we're going to need the lip in the same place as well. So on this that would be 85 it looks like, or near enough. I mean, you can easily do this with X-ray. The reason I was trying to turn it off there is, you know, when you're looking at this on a tutorial, it's a bit easier to see if you don't have that X-ray switched on. But, you know, easy enough. We're just cutting space for the lip here. Whoops. There we go. And close it, please. Thank you. Right, so we need one more here. So I think at about 25%. Now, if you did want to get the more square look on the reference, you could have, of course, just match these verts up exactly to it, but I don't think it's necessary with such a small part. And we've gone through a lot of modeling in this tutorial, so I'm sure you can take your time at home and maybe cut it out a bit more precisely. But on screen right now, I don't want to make you guys wait too long until we can see our finished wheel. So there we go. And now I can turn off X-ray, and you can see what we've cut. So let's have a look at this in the perspective view. Let's just drag this reference out of the way now because we don't need it. In fact, let's just turn it off. So object mode, so we've got a front, grid off, and a back. Now the back is basically just a hole in the middle where the axle would go. So in order to do that, we'll select these like so, these like so, and these like so. And actually what wants to come up on the back, let me just look at the reference again. I'm having a brain moment. So on the back is a hole. Okay, so this is actually indented as well on the back. I thought there was something that wasn't looking quite right about that. So for this extrusion, you want this one, and we're going to just extrude these outwards. Now it's the back where most of the thickness is in this tire. So model in toolkit and extrude. Let's make it a central extrusion and make sure we're in the right axis here. And like so. And this would be where the axle went on the wheel. So let's get divisions down to 1, object mode, and now we have different sides to this. So let's smooth it. Okay, that's gone, bonkers here because we need some smoothing control edges around. So let's come in and do that. So one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, of course. Now we need to cut one in there, which we will do in a second. Let's just get the easy ones done first. So here, and on the outside, here, here, here. So let's have a look at that. That's holding together a bit better, isn't it? So let's come in, and we really want to cut one around here, around this bottom circle. So come in with your multi-cut tool, and around 95%, we want a nice sharp edge on the bottom of this thing. Now we could remove every other edge here to get back to quadrid geometry, but this cylinder is not going to deform, so again, I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. And that, of course, didn't close when I clicked it, so there we go. So if we did want to go, or we did need to go back to quadrid topology here, it's never a bad idea. Let's just do it right quick. So every second edge you can see I'm selecting, and I believe we have done this before in this tutorial, delete edge, and we should be back to quadrid topology. In fact, we are. Okay, so in the case of a cylinder like this, it's not terribly important. These are all quads already, so let's select every second edge around here. So 1, 1, 2, 1, like so. And delete, and we are once again back as a quad. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so nice and simple. Right, let's smooth this and see. We're looking wheel here, wheel here. Now this looks black in the middle, but that's absolutely fine. That will render up just fine. If this was translucent, we might do it a different way, but it's not, so it doesn't really matter. Let's make sure here. Okay, One of the things we've got is no back faces on any of these, so we could actually close them if we wanted to, you know, between the sprockets here. So what you would need to do is come in and grab, let's say, edge number 1 and edge number 2 and bridge, and you'll see that's actually closed up the back of that, like so. So you can go around and do that. In fact, we'll do that now. You'll see it makes a bit of a difference when it's smoothed. Not a huge amount, but a bit. And we should have a back on those anyway. So let's just go around and do it for all of them. Edge, edge, bridge, edge, edge, bridge. And in fact, let's see what we've got in terms of topology in here. Okay, so it's not bad. Just to close the gaps on those sprockets. So now I can't remember which ones I've done, of course. Did I do this one? Yes, I did. How about this one? Okay, where am I? Stuck somewhere in the model here. Okay, yeah, that one appears to be done. So I'm going to keep going round, and there should only be 8 of them to do, so it's not too much of a hardship. Okay, this one and this one, bridge, this one and this one, bridge, this one and this one, bridge. We've already done that one. This one and this one, so we've probably done this one. Yeah, we've done them all. Right, select the faces in the center, because this is actually an extrusion as well. This is actually sitting proud of the surface. So extrude up just a little bit, and division 0, done with that. Okay, so there is our wheel without tire. So we'll look at the tire now. So there we go, and there we go, and we are definitely going to need some smoothing control around here, almost certainly. So let's cut some smoothing, let's cut some smoothing, let's cut some smoothing, just to control that smooth. There we are. Probably going to need some around here as well, possibly around here and here, and maybe even around these sprockets on this kind of level. So again, easier to work on a quarter, but this kind of thing, you know, for me, especially when I'm doing this like now as a demonstration, it's very quick to cut these edges in, and it saves having to continuously go backwards and forwards, chop the model in half, mirror it and whatnot. You could also use symmetry up here, which sometimes is going to work for you, sometimes not, depending on what it is you're doing. But let's check the smoothing of this. That's looking much better. Let's just click off, and that's looking pretty good. Quite happy with that. Now we've got a bit of a problem with the smooth line around there, and that's because we have no smoothing edges here or here. There we go, or indeed here or here. So let's have a look. Yeah, that's not bad. That looks pretty par on for the original Lego wheel, to be honest, as that is what our original Lego wheel looks like. Now I'm going to do a smoothing hold here as well, all the way around the outside, along with, you could possibly even do one through the center of each of these. So again, it depends on the look you're going for, on how well you want those edges to hold. You can get some quite severe pinching and distortion if you don't have enough edges to hold your smoothing. I think we would have gotten away with what we had, to be frank, but take the extra time and see. I can always take these loops out if I don't like them. And how are we doing now? Oh yeah, that's looking pretty nifty. Okay, I am actually quite happy with that. Now these don't appear to be perfectly round here, and that kinda gets me. So in order to combat that a little bit, I'm going to make a double lip here, select all these, select all these, select all these, and then extrude them just a little bit, so it looks like these are actually not one piece, but you know, this is a little thicker. So extrude here, go for a central extrusion, just a little bit. Divisions 0, object mode, smooth it, and now it looks like the spokes connect more dramatically to the hubcap, and you know, it appears to be back to completely round again. So yeah, I'm not unhappy with this wheel so far. Let's look at the back of it, and the back of it's looking good. Back of it's looking very plain and simple, but that's the part that would end up, you know, affixing to the axle on the Lego car. So the front and back are dramatically different in this case, and I'm actually quite happy with that. Now you can tinker around with the smoothing, maybe get it a little more dramatic or a little less dramatic, but for me, I'm just going to put a tire on this thing, which will make it a bit different as well. So let's bring back this, and let's grab it and shove it downwards, because I believe it's on top. Right, now we can change our orthographic view here to top, and let's bring the tire in. So attribute editor, and I've got a tire here. Now the tire is about as simple can be. Tire will just use a poly pipe, scale it up like so, and you know, it's too fat, but not an issue. So I'm going to Control H to hide this. I'm going to select this edge, and then I am going to just scale it like so. And is that giving us any problems with the scale? Yes, it is, because we need to select both edges. So, of course, so scale it like so. Doesn't matter if you get it a bit big. Let's bring our tire, our wheel back in, not our tire, and then we can scale it. So, now, seeing what's happened here, that's not good. Let's grab all these vertex. That was my scaling that did that. I should have just scaled in 2 axes and not 3. Okay, and then let's come in and grab this edge and grab this edge. And this time when we scale, hold Control and scale just on X and Z, which you can do by holding Control and scaling on Y. Now we can scale that in like so till it completely encompasses our tire, our wheel, sorry. I don't know why I keep getting those two confused. Now let's scale it. So easier in this view. And we want that to fit exactly nice and neatly on our tire here. So again, hold, in this case we are just scaling in Y, so we can then just scale in Y. No holding of Control necessary. Okay, and when we smooth that, that'll fit on there just like the wheel will. So it needs some smoothing control edges. And this wheel also, let's just move it for a second, has an indentation running around it. So multi-cut tool, where are we? Multi-cut, here we are. And let us select these faces. In fact, let us select these faces and these faces, and we're going to push these outwards a bit. So we're going to extrude here and centralized extrusion, click on this to scale, click Control and scale in Y to uniformly scale X and Z, and there we go. And that gives us a little lip that would hold the tire on. Okay, so we shouldn't need to do anything more than that. That's just a little lip here so we can hold the tire on. Move the tire up, and again the tire is going to need some smoothing of its own, but I'm not going to get it too close to the edge this time. I'm going to do quite a big smoothing. So one here and one here, and then on the inside we'll need one here and one here, so far away from the edge basically. So we get a big smooth, because Lego tires, you know, they're not very sharp, as you would probably expect. So let's just hide our wheel for a second while we do the inside smooths. So again, big smooths. not too close to the edge, and that still gives us, you know, a nice smooth bearing on the way down. Excuse me, Google notification. I think I just run out of cache. That's probably a good job we are coming near to the end of this part. But anyway, Shift H to bring the wheel back in. Okay, now we're talking. Now it might need to be moved a little bit. Let's get that precisely on the rim. So we want that rim to pop up like so. You know, you want to be able to see it. You want the wheel to be sitting on the rim. And now vertex, let's just get this exactly right for the bottom too. So we want to be able to see that rim. There it is, lovely jubbly. Object mode, done, and done. There is your wheel. One last thing, let's give them names. So this would be the wheel, tire, grab them both, Control G to group them, modify, center the pivot of the group, call the group, wheel, group, and E to rotate, J to lock the rotation. Let's just stand this thing up straight. There we go. One Lego wheel. So in the next part we're going to come in and look at a build animation. So we're going to do this in Maya. We're going to take the bricks that we built in part 1, the bricks that we built here in part 2, and put them together into a nice Lego truck this time. So if you're following along from part 1, then you really won't need to watch it. However, I will be building a different car just to keep it a little more interesting. So join me for that if you'd like, and I'll show you a different way to put all these bricks together that we've made into a little Lego truck. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in that part. Cheers. Hi, welcome back. So if you watched the previous volume, you'll know that at the end of it we put together a Lego car, this one specifically. Now, because I'm guessing a lot of you will have skipped the simpler modeling if you moved straight on to this part to model these more complicated pieces, I'm going to build another car. We'll need another one if you follow me through to the dynamics portion of this tutorial, which will be out a bit later, because we're going to crash two cars together. So this part is really for the benefit of you guys that skipped volume 1 because the modeling was perhaps a bit simple for you, or if you have seen volume 1 and want to build another car with the same bricks, you can watch this. I'm going to do the same as I did last time. I will time-lapse a lot of this, because it's going to be fairly uninteresting watching me put this together in real time, but the time-lapse will allow you to see where all the bricks go. So a note before we start though on scaling, if I have a look at this block, I'm going to go to the orthographic views. I just wanted to let you know what scale it was in, so I'm going to press Ctrl and 1 to isolate that on the views, and this is in a scale of 5 by 5, so each Lego brick piece is 5 Maya units long, and if I center this on the grid, that will be easier for us to see. So now let's get it central. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This makes our Lego bricks really easy to move about with snapping should we want to. So the scale I've worked out here is 5 by 5 by 2, which means a standard Lego brick is 2 high. They call it a Lego plate, I think. And then a standard Lego brick, the tall ones, are 6 high. These knobs on the top are always 1 high. Now that might not be exactly perfect to Lego's scaling, but you can always come in and scale the car down after you've finished. Just for us in Maya, having these sizes as 5 by 5, so this would be 20 by 10 by 2, makes everything nice and simple to work out. Make sure you've got the right size for everything is nice and easy. We can also turn on movement snapping, so if we snap this 5 units, we can easily move it 5 units, and it makes some of the blocks easier to move about. Now I'm going to do most of this with the snapping turned off, because with the snapping turned off I get slightly different sized gaps in between the bricks, which I quite like. It gives it a more organic Lego put together feel. So I'm going to hide this car now, and I'm going to start by, oh yeah, that was the brick we moved out into the center of the grid, right? Wondered why that was there. Okay, so I've hidden the car, and I'm going to start by literally building this as I would build Lego. So in this case I'm going to start with the back axle block that we built in this tutorial, and then I'm going to take this one. Now when I move these things, I'm not just going to move them, I'm going to hit Control D and duplicate them, so I always have a master set of Lego bricks in case I need another one or I want to come along and build something else. So again, just Control duplicate all these, and this will literally be putting Lego bricks into place here. Now it really doesn't take that long. Once you get started, the first few can take a bit longer, making sure your alignment is nice, but as you can see with the scaling we're using, it was very, very simple to get all these bricks into exactly the right size. Okay, so really I'm going to put this together. It'll allow you to see the way the car goes together, and I'm going to go quiet now and just time-lapse this build, because as I say, there's not really a lot to talk about. We're literally just placing one brick on another. You can use the snapping if you want to get the bricks into position, and then do the little tweaks to give it that organic feel. So I'll be back when I've completed the first third of the car, just to do a quick spin round, and then I'll go back to the time-lapse and continue until we reach the end. So I would also say you can watch a build animation of this, which I'll do as well if you don't want to go through the time-lapse. Okay, so that's the back third of our little tow truck thing done here. And now I'm going to work on the middle. But as you can see, that took about 15 minutes in real time, I should think. So it's not too arduous a task. You can expect to build something simple in Lego in about 45 minutes. I'll time-lapse that part, of course, because it's not that interesting to watch it in real time. You know, it's useful if you want to know where to put your bricks to build this particular car, but no need for you to sit here in silence with me for 15 minutes. So I'll time lapse probably to a speed of 3, so it's all done in a few minutes. Alright, so I'll be back in a second when I'm going to go back to the time lapse now and build the middle of the car. Okay, so we are done here with the front and back of our little pickup truck. I thought there would be something in the middle, but there is not. So I'm going to come in and hide my finished bricks now, because I don't need them. So first off, before we do that, if we do that, you can see all of these are still marked as finished bricks. So I'm going to just select this, and I'm going to Control G to group it. Then I'll go find the group, pull it out, and call this one tow truck front, and Control G to group it again, middle mouse drag it out, call it tow truck back, and then it's just a case of sliding the pieces together. So center the pivot, modify center pivot, and let's just come in here, make sure we get that nice and tight, butted. There we go, that looks about good. Obviously you might want to spend a bit more time at home sorting that out, but that looks pretty good. Let's bring our car in. So I'm just going to move this ever so slightly out of the way. Then I should be able to now hide all my finished blocks. I can, because they're no longer part of this, so Control H to hide those. And let's bring the little car back as well, why not? Shift H. And yeah, let me just center that back up. I was missing a part during the build, I think this part here, so I had to take it from the car. My apologies for that. Okay, so that's the car. Let's grab the little tow truck now, move him around the right way round. So I can group both sections of this tow truck and just call it tow truck, and the same with the car. Can group all the sections of the car and just call it car. And I'm going to come in and center the pivot on both of those groups, because Maya won't do that for you. And let's just rotate this guy. There we go. Let's put a floor in so we can get a better look, make sure they're on the ground plane. Okay, one little Lego toy truck, one little Lego car. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope it's given you some opportunity to go out and buy yourself some Lego. It's quite fun. And I will see you in the next series of tutorials where we'll cover dynamics, lighting, UVing, all that kind of good stuff. So really hope that this is been useful to you, and if you need to get hold of me, I'm available on the SimplyMaya forum. Just post a question in there. Lots of helpful folks that'll be happy to lend you a hand. And if you want to get me directly, you can just do it with David or Dave at simplymaya.com. So thank you very much for your time, and thanks for watching.